Good evening, everyone. It's 6 o'clock, and it's time to call the meeting to order. Getting a little feedback, and I like that. So please join me in saying the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Elizabeth, can you call the roll, please?
Mayor Harker,
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Cooper,
Here.
Commissioner Gilligan,
Here.
Commissioner LaPiccolo,
Here.
Commissioner Oliver,
Here.
Commissioner Spiegler.
Here. Okay. We have an agenda in front of you, and can I get a motion to approve the agenda as written?
So moved with the.
We've got a motion on the floor. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. So the first item is the items of consent, which is the meeting minutes from April 14th and 28th of 2025. Is there any further questions about that? If not, can I get a motion to approve the items of consent?
Man, I think we did have a necessary, a little minor change there from Mrs. to Mr.
Yes, sir, I got that.
Yeah.
All righty.
Then I make a motion that we approve the item consent with necessary changes.
Okay, we've got a motion on the floor. Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed have the same right. Thank you. Now we're going to move on to old business. The first one is the petition for annexation at 2303 Highway 70. There's a certificate of sufficiency. And Matt, who do we have? I think that's Elizabeth. Okay?
Thank you, Mayor and Board. This evening, I will be presenting my initial findings regarding the petition for annexation of 2303 Highway 70, Beaufort. Little background here, Carteret County government submitted a petition for voluntary annexation on February 20th, 2025 at your At the April 14th regular meeting, the Town of Beaufort Board of Commissioners adopted a resolution instructing the town clerk to investigate the sufficiency of the petition for annexation. The overall findings for this parcel in question, it's a 41.0 acre vacant tract. It is currently in the ETJ and zoned R20. The property is within an X flood zone. Upon speaking with staff internally, we identified the potential for an increase in emergency service call volume, which in turn may cause additional staffing needs in the future. This area is served by Duke Energy. It is important to know if the property is annexed, it would not generate tax revenue as it is owned by a governmental entity. The sewer allocation request associated with the proposed usage would require a 24-gallon per day usage, which represents about 2% of the total capacity. This number was derived off the concept of a 300-bed jail facility with additional office space for about 52 employees. Included in your meeting packet is a full application, including the survey map referenced on the screen, and information related to the future project from the county. And with that, I have completed the investigation of the petition and submit the following findings. The petition for voluntary annexation of 2303 Highway 70, Beaufort, 41.08 acres contains an adequate boundary of requested area to be annexed via the survey map. The area described in the petition is contiguous to the Town of Beaufort primary corporate limits as defined by General Statute 160A-31. The petition is signed by the owner of the reference parcel above and includes the addresses of all owners of real property lying in the area described therein. The next step in requested action is for the board to set a public hearing date for June 9th on the question of annexation of 2303 Highway 70. During the public hearing, the applicant will be able to speak as well as anybody who owns property in the Town of Beaufort corporate limits. Consideration of the sewer allocation request will follow the annexation decision, and we decided to run those two items concurrently, so you're making a decision on the sewer request after you've made a decision on the annexation. I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Thank you, Elizabeth. We'll start with Commissioner Lopiccolo.
No questions.
Thank you. Commissioner Gilligan.
No questions.
Thank you. Commissioner Spiegler.
No questions.
Thank you. Commissioner Oliver.
I'm sorry, I just couldn't hear you. How many gallons of sewer did you say? 20,000?
24,000.
Thank you. That's the only question I had.
Thank you. And Commissioner Cooper.
Just one, I know it's various flood zone, but what's X flood zone?
Yes, sir, that's the 100-year.
Under your
yes, sir.
floodplain? Okay. That's all I have, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Unless there's any further questions, I just need a motion to set the
That's not
public.
correct.
Oh, what?
It's
That's
not, it's
not
not 100
correct.
year. It's outside of the 100 year.
A portion of it is actually in the NIZ, or the proposed NIZ.
Only a
So
small part.
X is not part of the
Yeah.
100-year
Correct.
flood zone?
Yeah.
No. Okay, we've got shaking of head from planner. No.
I apologize.
Okay. So was that able to answer your question, Commissioner Cooper?
Yes, I mean, yeah.
Oh, okay, very good. All right, unless there's any further questions for staff, just need a motion to set the public hearing for June the 9th.
Make a motion that we set a public hearing for June 9th for the about annexation of 2303 Highway 70.
Thank you. We've got a motion on the floor. Any questions? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All right, all opposed have the same right. Now we're going to move on to the UDO draft vision statement revision.
Good evening, everyone. Tonight, I'd like to bring our attention to the revised draft of the UDO Vision, Principles, and Goals Statement. The UDO Steering Committee and the Board of Commissioners reviewed this document on March 10th. Revisions were provided based on comments from the committee and board and provided to both groups. Proposed revisions to that document were proposed and discussed further in a virtual UDO Steering Committee meeting on April 16th. Further direction is needed on those revisions to some of the goals in the document. I want to bring into view the purpose of the document. The goal of this vision statement isn't to pin down specific policy decisions, but we're establishing general directives for the drafting process per our land use plan. We're focusing on agreeing to the items in the vision statement document, even though it relates to complex or controversial concepts like the non-intensification zone or short-term rentals. It's not clickering. A lot of the town's general positions are contained within our code assessment that we finished last fall, but are not going to be fully articulated until the drafting occurs over the next few years, and full adoption does not occur until later in 2027. So we have time to hash out these details over the next 2 years or so. We're looking at broad picture in this document. As provided in the memo from Whitesmith-Cousineau, quote, we know there will eventually be differing views on the regulatory approach, and the BOC will have to decide which paths to take. The UDO vision, principles, and goals, on the other hand, reflect the starting point of agreement, which, while general and therefore agreeable, is important to establish as a leaping off point in a project of this scope and duration. With that direction in mind, as you read in the memo provided in the agenda packet, there are 3 requested actions tonight. The first one is with regard to item number 1 of the goals section of the document. The steering committee discussed proposed revisions during that April 16th meeting and preferred the revised language. I've included the screenshot from the memo of the original and proposed revised language here. So the question on this item is, does the board want to continue with the original language or the proposed language?
Well, let's open that up for discussion. We'll start with Commissioner Lopiccolo.
I'm for the proposed language, the revised language.
Thank you. Commissioner Gilligan.
Fine with the revised language.
Thank you. Commissioner Spiegler.
I also agree with the revised language.
Thank you. Commissioner Oliver.
No questions on number 1.
Okay.
Thank you. And Commissioner Cooper.
Same. No questions on it. Revised.
Okay.
One off your checklist.
Excellent. So number 2, similar question. We've got the steering committee discussed this proposed revision. Do we want to keep the original or go with the proposed language?
Okay, Commissioner Piccolo,
Same.
Commissioner Gilligan, okay, Commissioner Gilligan,
New language works for me.
Commissioner Spiegler,
Yes, the proposed revised language looks good.
Commissioner Oliver.
This is different revision than I saw. If you revise it again,
This is goals number 2. And this is just a screenshot out of the memo from the agenda packet. It may have been
I
revised.
have no questions with that, that wording.
Okay, wonderful.
Thank you. Commissioner Cooper.
Expand the availability and diversity of housing options that are attainable. And I know this is just a working project thing, but are you referring to being able to expand where that those that basically right now can't afford to live in here, that they would be able to? Or you're looking at changing?
As
Well, I'm
much
try-
as an ordinance
Well,
can.
yeah, what I'm trying to see is this going to be a UDO in terms of the housing that will be able to eventually say maybe as a developer come in, if he wants to do, say, 140 units, we set aside at least in there somewhere a 2% of the units be set aside for attainable housing.
Is that something you want to move forward on in drafting? I think that this statement, either way drafted, would support that. And that's definitely something that we can look at as we dive into housing options in the ordinance.
Okay, thank you.
All right. And the more controversial one that we've got a lot of different proposed language on, it's a little bit more in-depth, and we've got several revised versions. Keep in mind, we're not looking at draft regulatory language in this document, just general guidance for drafting. We've had a lot of great input and discussion for this particular goal, and just need to come to a general agreement for a leaping off point. And I'll point out that the non-intensification zone that we're identifying here was established in our Land Use Plan 2023. It's coterminous with the special flood hazard area, which means it's the 100-year floodplain. And so we've kind of discussed this and identified that we use NC-FRIZ. The Flood Risk Information System is a website where we have those flood maps. We use the county's GIS system, but FRIZ is really where we get the official outline of those flood maps. So that's what we use when we look at a property to see if it's going to have to put in flood vents or not, that sort of thing. So that's what we're using to identify where the non-intensification zone is those flood areas. So I want to open up for discussion. Does the board want to continue with the original language or go with one of these proposed revisions?
Okay. We'll start with Commissioner Piccolo.
So obviously, I have a proposed revision on it, and then I can read it. Number 3, it says strategically manage new utility and street infrastructure development within the NIZ, allowing for an expansion where appropriate through balanced approved mitigation measures that support long-term community goals. My concern with the other language here is that the NIZ itself is a very large part of our community. It encompasses a very, very large area in our community. It involves AE flood zones and VE flood zones. So it's not just it's not wetlands. It's an enormous amount of the area in our community. And if you agree with the NIZ map today, this could change. NIZ map could be determined to be different at another time, right? So if we agree on what we're talking about today, we could see an increased amount of area in our community within the NIZ affecting even more properties. So that's definitely a concern. When you look at some of the properties that are in the NIZ currently, you look at the jail, the Carter County site that we approved today, which has a portion in the NIZ. Pruitt Health, which was approved in the NIZ. The Deerfield community, which we have just recently approved lots and annexed, or not, I'm sorry, not annexed, but extended sewer into in our community. We have the airport, we have East Carteret High School. So we have quite a bit amount of property within the NIZ currently. So we really need to be careful about our wording. And as our consultant said, a good rule of thumb is that the UDO vision, principles, and goals should be broad enough to encompass consensus that the CAMA plan and other plans have established, and not so specific as to foreclose a particularly regulatory approach. So to me, that statement, which is more broad and more of a broad stroke, is much more appropriate for what we're trying to do, because it does kind of encompass what may need to be done later in time. It's not, to me, our job to regulate in the UDO. It's going to be the job of the commissioners that are elected that then decide whether or not we want to annex a property or extend sewer to that part of our community, whether it be within town or within the ETJ. And that then changed today. It could be, I mean, depending on what our board wants today, it could be different than what our board wants in 5 or 10 or 15 years. So to me, I'd rather have a much more kind of wide open or sweeping approach as opposed to being regulatory in our statement. And that's why I think that statement is best.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Gilligan?
I would like to advocate for revision D. I think that is pretty broad. It doesn't talk about what you can or can't do in the NIZ. It just says that we want to focus things and be common sense in the way we do things and focus our growth outside of the NIZ. I'm uncomfortable with any statement that includes mitigation, because I feel like that could be kind of an easy out for some of the things we actually want to accomplish. So I'm sticking with D.
D? Okay, thank you. Commissioner Spiegler?
So I had originally put in some edits to the proposed revision B. However, after listening to the UDO subcommittee really discuss this and what we want to accomplish and what the goals are, they came up with revision D, and I'll agree with Commissioner Gillikin. I do think revision D prioritizes what we want to do and what our vision is. I think it takes the guidance from the CAMA land use plan and really very succinctly describes that we need to be really forward thinking about where we develop. And I'll agree with Commissioner LaPiccolo. We already have a lot of infrastructure in our low-lying and vulnerable areas, and we are going to have to mitigate that damage already that's going to occur there. And so if we put more infrastructure into harm's way, we're going to have even more on top of what we already have existing right now, and that's going to cause more issues for our community, for our town staff, for our taxpayers. And so that is really the purpose of revision D. And this is an opportunity for us to take the CAMA land use plan, which is not regulatory, it's guidance, and take what the community vetted through the CAMA land use plan and put it into our ordinances and make that regulatory. And that's going to be really important for the next 5, 10, 15 years. As we are growing very rapidly in Beaufort, and we do need to make sure that we are putting infrastructure not in harm's way, but in places that make sense and that is smart development for Beaufort. So I will also say that revision D is the one that I would go with.
Thank you. Commissioner Oliver?
A couple things. I'm, as an opener, as we get into this, two things. One, I'm very much in favor of the UDO process. But I likewise remember very clearly Commissioner Gillikin saying that as we work our way through the remaining hundreds of pages that we're going to do, if we run into questions, we're going to come back to the vision statement for guidance. So I think that spending some time on the vision goals, and I believe they call them principles and goals, is extremely important. Having said that, I agree with Commissioner LaPiccolo that although this does say that you'll focus growth, new infrastructure, and expansion, it doesn't necessarily say what you would do otherwise. And I think we need to touch on that. The second and more important thing is, I think we need to understand what the non-intensification zone is before we spend an inordinate amount on these principles. And I will speak from my own ignorance. It's an extremely wide swath of our town, in my opinion. And I would like a very clear understanding of that pretty soon before we, and have a definition of that before we go much farther with our goals and principles. Because I think it affects a large percentage of our town. And I don't think that's understood and appreciated. I'm ignorant of it. I will take my own position. I have an opinion of what it is, but I think our residents and citizens have no idea what the NIZ is by definition and what it could be over time.
So based,
So that worries me a little bit.
all right,
Thank you, Mayor.
all right. But based on that, you have no alignment or commitment to A, B, C, or D until that is answered? So
No,
that's-
I wouldn't be that persnickety.
Okay.
I think D is the most, is the latest revolution. It's the best of what's up there,
okay.
but it doesn't answer two questions. One is, what's the definition of the NIZ? Clearly understood across the population. And when it says you focus on, does that mean or have any intention or any capacity to think that it would not permit other work? So that's a conditional wiffle waffle on D.
D, okay.
For that
All right,
one.
keep your head on tilt there. Thank you very much. Commissioner
Next would
Cooper.
be me. So Commissioner LaPiccolo, you're basically C? Is that what you're referring to? I mean, because you pointed out a lot of stats and where things are. So you is referring to C as what you would like for this to see, right?
Yeah, I think, like Commissioner Oliver said, I think the understanding of what the NIZ is really, really important. I mean, I think anyone can go on to the website of fris.nc.gov/map and be able to see the large swaths and what the NIZ touches in our community, and it's a pretty large area. And like I said, we already have infrastructure along Highway 70 that runs that is within the NIZ. And we've already we're moving to annex a piece of property that actually has within the NIZ as well with the
New government
jail,
building, yeah.
So, I think, when I look at this, I think we need to look at, if there's approved mitigation measures that support long-term community goals, I think there may be exceptions to the rule. We already have number 5, number 7, number 8, and number 11 that talk about environmental development and how we want to be conscious of that. So it's not that we're just, throwing this all out. We have lots of references to reducing environmental impact and developing an environmental friendly manner. I just think you got to be careful about saying we're not going to do something. We're just going to basically be all in on not expanding infrastructure.
You said not expanding infrastructure?
Right. And, there is precedent for, in local governments where, the developer could take on the infrastructure themselves. They could be responsible for it. They could pay for it. If there's problems with it, there may be an ability for the town to shut down that infrastructure. So it would not be on the town to then repair and take care of that. And there's precedent within the law for that and examples that are out there. So and like I said, I don't think, that everything needs to be accepted in our town. I think the boards that sit up here are going to decide that.
Yeah.
But I don't think you want to hamstring a board to say that you can't do something.
True on
If
that.
it does, provide long-term community goals, that it does fit that description.
So are you needing for us to do either A, B, C, or D in order for you to be able to move on?
Yes, sir.
And you're looking for that tonight?
Yes, sir.
And I would add to my comment that, and I apologize for, I had read page 35 of the handout, and I will admit that I had missed page 32, where you had the last two alternatives revised on this paragraph, so my apology first. But I think the easiest way to answer your question, Mayor, is having looked now at page 32, I think my proposed revision would be C, not D,
Okay.
because it specifically mentions mitigation. It says to balanced approved mitigation measures. That's close enough for me.
Okay, that's what John's proposing.
Thank you.
Can I ask a question?
Yes. Well, hold on, are you finished?
I couldn't hear the question.
I was just making sure that Commissioner
She
Cooper
was
was
making
able
sure
to
that I
finish
was,
it.
yeah, she was
Yeah.
making sure if I would finish. I love what Commissioner Piccolo is saying. I'm in that boat in terms of expansion of existing infrastructure, so I guess I would have to do with D.
B as in boy?
D as a
D is,
dog.
okay. All righty, so let's bounce back to Commissioner Spiegel, you had a question.
I just wanted to ask Commissioner Oliver, when you say mitigation, what exactly do you mean by mitigation?
Well, it actually says through balanced approved mitigation. Those three words together. But as a, for instance, we had a speaker here when the last time we had this that has done a lot of construction in this area and specifically in Beaufort. And he says, I've built in wetlands before, but I recognize that we have to have mitigation in order to do it. One thing that you see sometimes is building homes on piers where they're elevating the house. So I would presume that somewhere in here, we would have a group of balanced approved mitigation. And that's what I've been harping on for a year.
I think maybe understanding how we're defining mitigation will be important for this process too. If we're using mitigation as we're coming back and repairing damage, that's really what we want to avoid, especially in the NIZ. We want to be preventative so that the damage is not occurring there in the first place. It's a lot less expensive to go back and fix the damage than to put the infrastructure into harm's way and then have to go back and clean it up. And while it's a nice idea that the developers are going to be the ones footing the bill, we already have examples in Beaufort where they're not footing the bill. I mean, we have Professional Park right now where we're paying thousands of dollars for the flooding there.
Not yet.
Well,
We have lots of
we're
requests.
trying to address the issue.
Well, but we're trying to address it to, things. So I have no
Professional park
quarrel with
isn't in the
your
NIZ
comment
either.
at all. But I think we need to involve the professional community in this, and she's getting to one of these down the road, which I'll comment on that. But I don't think we should ask a landowner to have a taking of their property when there is a way for that property to be used and/or developed under proper, balanced, approved mitigation methods.
Can I just make a comment? The NIZ, the professional park is not in the NIZ. And that's where I think we have to really understand what we're talking about when we're talking about the NIZ. We're not just talking about wetlands. Wetlands are our own separate entity. We're talking about the floodplains. The NIZ incorporates all VE and AE floodplains. So we're not just talking about mitigation in wetlands. I mean, you're talking about, if you could pull up the map of what this looks like, it is an enormous portion of our town which could change and actually be increased. So there could be properties that we think today were totally fine that could change later on. Isn't that correct, Joe?
Did you guys,
Can you pull that
Of
up?
the NIZ?
Yes.
did you guys entertain that when y'all was meeting?
Yes.
Or what, Commissioner Piccolo is stating?
Yes, yeah,
In terms
we've,
of property?
There we go.
yeah, we've discussed this a lot. So we have effective maps currently that are fairly old. They're made effective in 2003. So there are preliminary maps that are on the table that we can't take advantage of yet. But those maps are going to change. And so that's actually, those maps don't change our guidance. The commissioners would have to make a change to our land use plan to adopt those new maps to override the non-intensification zone shown in our land use plan. I think there would be consensus to make that change because the best available mapping is going to show us our risky areas. So once that happens, our NIZ would change, and so that is going to encompass different areas. It's expanding in some places, reducing in some places, going up in base flood elevation in some areas. So it is going to change the landscape of that decision.
Zoom in further.
So are we under a time frame here, Commissioner?
So
Yellow.
everything on
Yes.
in the yellow and blue is NIZ.
Not yellow, just the blue and the green, which we can see in the bottom, and that's the VE. So we're just looking at that blue. The yellow is the X, which we call 500-year floodplain. It's a 0.2% chance of flooding in any given year. So we're looking at the 1% chance of flooding, which is those blue area. And I like Frizz is this site. It has all of the building footprints, so you can see which buildings are kind of in and out.
So on my, no, the yellow is 0.2% chance of flooding. The area that's not shaded is X.
Right, so the shaded X is the 0.2% chance. Those are out of the NIZ. Anything that's blue or green is what we consider to be in the NIZ. Those are in the regulatory floodplain. That's where we have construction requirements, things like that. Anything that's yellow or clear, basically, is outside of that area that we're looking at.
I have a suggestion.
Yes.
So could we tonight, if we come to a consensus on one, and then make a note by it that says once we get into the nitty-gritty of writing the ordinances, it's a check for alignment with that particular one, and if it doesn't make sense, then we can realign it to what we think makes sense. I don't think this precludes any development in the NIZ. This doesn't say you can't develop in the NIZ. This just says, don't
I
do
agree with
stupid
you.
things in the
I
NIZ.
agree with you there.
Yeah, so I think,
But it leaves there's no direction
right.
there. What it does is it says you can do this, but what about all the rest of this stuff?
Right, I think the reason that some of us in the committee were pretty enthusiastic about this idea, because it kind of takes the spirit and the overarching vision and says, well, let's not talk about what we can't do in the NIZ, we can direct, focus growth outside of it. It doesn't mean that we can't grow inside of the NIZ at all. And I'm not opposed to talking about measures like elevating on stilts or other things like that, once we get down into the nitty-gritty of the ordinance. I'm definitely not opposed to that. And I think some of our definitions of mitigation are different. Sarah and I in particular probably have pretty firm ideas of what environmental mitigation is, and it's hard
Agreed.
for me to kind of think what other things.
Agreed.
So I
And I
agree with
agree
you about that
100%.
definition.
I would really like D if it had another sentence that said, nothing in this is intended to discuss if you're out of the, but again, we have to move forward. I think that's a good way to do it for now, but I think you have to recognize that from a staff standpoint, that there's more attention required to this paragraph.
Yeah, and I don't wanna-
Because it hasn't answered the other side of the deal.
Right, and I don't want to cause frustration to staff or the consultant by putting an asterisk by that, but just making sure that we're all comfortable with the alignment of the ordinance when we get into the guts of the ordinance, and making sure that D still looks good for us. Would that be an option for us tonight?
Yes, moving forward with that, and just because the consultants aren't here doesn't mean they're not logged in listening. They're definitely going to use this conversation as guidance moving
Okay.
forward. And I trust that you and Commissioner Lopiccolo on our steering committee are going to help make sure that we keep in line with that and keep the commissioners' voices in mind as we look at those. We're actually looking at moving in those next steps. We're going to have some community outreach in June. On June 20th, we're working with Public Information Office to get that information out later this week. But just keep that in mind, that we're going to be looking at Module 1 and looking at some draft language after the steering committee takes a look at it. So we'll be rolling out some very exciting conversations.
I don't want to be rude
Tonight.
Yes, sir.
or impertinent on that, but actually this board is the one that makes those decisions.
Absolutely. And none of this is going forward until you guys adopt it.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
I
So,
think we,
looks
sorry, go
like-
ahead.
No, it
Mayor
looks like
Harker.
you might have a consensus for D right now.
Yes.
But I think in the spirit of getting back to that and honoring some of the conversations that we've had here tonight, that's a D for moving forward, but not a D necessarily ending the conversation. Also, too, it seems like what I'm hearing is that might be necessary for us to have a little bit of education 101 on NIZ again.
Absolutely.
Maps, locations, what it's all about, just for our edification as well as for the citizens too, to make sure that we're all going on the same page. Although we are making the final decision, we want to be able to make sure our citizens are catching up to snuff. This is very interesting, I know, right? But can get kind of complicated. But maybe we need to backtrack with a little bit of education, and we'll move on with D for now.
Sounds good.
Is that okay, Board?
Good.
All righty.
Are you good with that, John?
The vote is for D. I would vote for C, but the vote is for D.
We're going to consensus with D. I won't necessarily say vote per se, but getting back to the overarching reach, you've got everything that you need. You've got 1 and 2 checked off.
1 and 2,
Right, and
and
D
item number
for-
3. So I feel like this, having answered those questions, this statement is ready to move forward with those revisions.
Okay.
Excellent. Thank you, everyone.
All righty.
Well, you had some more items on the vision statement. Are you not going to discuss the rest of them?
Those were not, we didn't need clarification on those, but I'm absolutely happy to discuss those if you want to bring those up for topic.
Okay. Let's see if I can get to the latest version.
There were
Right.
some revisions proposed, and the steering committee entertained the first 2 and then decided to keep the remaining language on the rest of them. Obviously, the commissioners can go with the proposed language or the original language, but the steering committee wanted to keep the March 10th language, basically, that you guys take a look at.
However, those meetings are not open to either the commissioners or the public, is that correct? They're open, but they're not, no participation.
I mean, March 10th, the steering committee, and then the subsequent Board of Commissioners meeting.
But the committee meetings are not, there's no public input other than the committee members, am I correct?
Not during the meeting, no. I'm always available
Right,
for.
So I am correct, is the
Yes,
answer.
sir. There's no public comment at the meetings.
So going, what I hope is, I'm sorry for not being caught up with you, but I have a couple questions, like on number 3, on principles guide number 3. Can you get to that? Thank you. One of the things it says in here is that the outreach and opportunities for input are inclusive in all community members, businesses and industries, including members of the development community. Can you tell me what meetings of those have occurred?
Meaning we had some outreach to the development community on March 10th and 11th.
Can you send me minutes of that meeting? I'm not
Yes.
familiar with any development people who have been spoken to.
I believe I sent it out to the board, but I can resend it out. Yes, sir.
On number 4, which says the development of new and revised standards, regulations recognize and give equal measure to all communities and areas within the town jurisdiction. How has that been done? And when?
Well, this is principles for the drafting of the UDO. We're still getting into our outreach like a public engagement strategy. We had a meeting with the consultant.
So is it fair to say that none of that outreach has yet occurred? Is that what you're saying?
Other than the meetings with the commissioners and the steering committee, no, we haven't had any outreach yet. We've got a meeting on the June 20th, and then we're going to be at the farmer's market on the 21st. That's kind of kicking off our outreach. As of yet, we've been on more of the technical setting up of the document side.
So it's therefore safe to say that number 4, recognize and give equal measure to all communities and the areas, that is yet to occur.
But will over the course of the drafting,
Yes,
yes,
ma'am.
sir.
Okay, thank you. On number 5, discussions and opportunities for participation reflect minority representation consistent with the town's demographics. Has that occurred?
No, sir, but that's good to point out that we need to make sure that that happens.
Okay. On number 7, it says policy options and standards generate community support and balance multiple aspects relative to each subject area. Do they?
They're in the code assessment, and they're in the land use plan, so I would hope so.
But we're yet to develop some policy options, though. We're not even there yet.
Okay. I had one other question on the other page, which I just not smart enough to understand what this means. Under number 4, my copy of it reads that ensuring development and redevelopment of commercial and mixed-use areas is context appropriate. Can you tell me what that means? Please?
Context appropriate, so appropriate in the context of a neighborhood. Development or redevelopment may be residential, but within a commercial area may be commercial, mixed use, something like that. So context appropriate meaning the location or
Okay.
sort of.
I would suggest at a minimum there that you add the words "to the neighborhood" or "to the area" or something to that, because I didn't understand what context appropriate was, and that I just didn't understand that. Those are all my questions, Mayor. Thank you.
Okay. Does anybody have any further questions for Michelle? Commissioner Piccolo?
None.
Thank you. Commissioner Gilligan?
No questions.
Thank you. Commissioner Spiegler?
I don't have any questions. I just want to say thank you to the UDO subcommittee who's been working on this and all of the input they did give in this draft.
Commissioner Oliver has already asked his questions. Commissioner Cooper?
None.
All righty. Thank you, Michelle.
Thank you.
Great job, and great job to the committee.
Thank you, Michelle.
Thank you, Michelle.
Now we're going to move on to FY '25 Budget Amendment Number 4. And who do we have for that? Here she comes.
Good evening, Mayor and Commissioners. So I'm bringing back Budget Amendment Number 4 from the last meeting because there were some questions about the amounts that were being requested to be approved. So tonight, this is just general fund and one stormwater fund action that we're requesting you to consider. In the general fund, the budget amendment is requesting an overall decrease of $413,176. We would like to decrease the raise grant revenue that we're not going to receive. And then there'll be an increase in sales and service for $56,000, which is a result of the fire apparatus that was sold on surplus. And then also an increase in other revenue for a donation of $49,254. For the stormwater fund, there's a decrease requested of $294,815, and that is for the Lassie grant that was budgeted in the project fund. And I'll be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you. Commissioner LaPiccolo?
No questions.
Thank you. Commissioner Gilligan?
No questions.
Thank you. Commissioner Spiegler?
No questions.
Thank you. Commissioner Oliver?
No questions.
Thank you. And Commissioner Cooper?
None.
All right, thank you very much. Thank you, Christine. So when it comes down to the action for approving the FY25 budget amendment number 4, what is the pleasure of the board?
I'll make a motion that we approve the FY25 budget amendment number 4 as proposed.
Thank you. Got a motion on the floor. Any further questions? All in favor, say aye. Aye. All opposed have the same right. Now we're going to move on to the BWOF, the Beaufort Waterfront Operations and Finance Committee update. And we have our chair, Sarah Spiegler, and our vice chair, Commissioner Gilligan, and I'll let you take over. Chair?
Thank you, Mayor Harker. We just have a few quick updates for you all. We want to start with our public engagement event. We hosted a waterfront community conversations back in April, on April 15th, and I want to say a special thank you to Rachel Johnson, town staff, and Miriam Sutton, one of our BWOF members, for organizing that event. It was extremely well attended. I don't have an official count because we hosted it actually down at the waterfront. But I would say we had over 100 people, possibly more. It was a really great turnout, informal process where community members got to meet the members of our BWOF committee, ask questions, learn what we're doing. We heard a lot of really positive feedback. People were able to fill out comment cards and turn those in. We also currently have a survey open on our website. I don't know if, Elizabeth, you might be able to pull that up. If you were not able to attend the Waterfront Community Conversations in person, you can go and fill out the survey online. I believe it's open till May 23rd, and it's right here, yep, on the screen. So you do have a few more days, actually about 2 more weeks, I believe, if you want to go, a week and a half, if you want to go fill that out. We're very excited for all of the input that we got, all of the positive feedback. There's a really great timeline at the top of the web page as well, that you can click on and see what we've been working on over the past year. So just thank you to everybody that was able to attend. It was a really great event, and we hope to host more of those in the future. I have a couple more items, but Commissioner Gillikin, do you want to add anything about that public engagement event?
Yeah, it was really well done, and I like the fact that we had an in-person event, even though it was blowing about 30 knots in the beginning of the event. And a combination of the survey, because I know some people from out of town, even some cruisers that come through town, stopped in person, and they're also taking the survey. So I think we'll get a good blend of results that'll be useful to our effort.
Thank you. A quick update on our legislative appropriation. We currently have a $12 million appropriation in for the waterfront project. I did get in, the only update I can really share is that the understanding is that the House budget will be coming out soon. Fingers crossed. We really won't know anything until the budget report comes out, but still, we're using our contacts in Raleigh to continue forward with that appropriation, and we're very fortunate to have members on our BWOF committee that are working on that. The next item is the fuel farm installation. So we are working on purchasing our own fuel tanks and installing them. We do have approval from the Board of Commissioners to install them in the west parking lot, and so we're moving forward with that. To install our own fuel farm so that we can generate the revenue from that going forward. We also are currently working on contracting with a marina management company. We do not have a firm in place yet, but we are conducting interviews with marina management companies currently, and if you go look at the timeline, that is set to take place January 1, 2025. That's when we expect to have the new company on board and ready to manage the waterfront marina. And so that's all very exciting. We have a lot of really good ideas about, how we want to market our waterfront and make sure it's Beaufort-centric, to incorporate all of the community feedback that we've heard over the past year. So that's really all of my updates I have from the Waterfront Committee. I did want to remind everybody who's here, and if you're listening online, our next meeting is this Friday, May 16th, 1 p.m. in the train depot on the other side, and everybody from the public is welcome to attend. So that is our next meeting this Friday, May 16th. Commissioner Gillikin, do you have anything else to add?
I don't have anything else to add. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. And if there's any commissioners that want to ask questions, we can take questions.
Thank you. Commissioner LoPiccolo, any questions for the committee?
No question.
Thank you. Commissioner Oliver?
No questions.
Thank you. Commissioner Cooper?
None.
Great job. Just imagine all that you guys have done since you were organized in August, and still a lot more work to do, but you've put yourselves in a very good position by putting together an excellent team, and I want to thank you both for your leadership and that guidance. So great job. So we're going to move on to public comment. Have anybody signed up?
I have 2 individuals signed up. The first one is Ethan Lewis.
Mr. Lewis, thank you. You'll have 3 minutes, Mr. Lewis. Please state your name and address.
Hey y'all, thanks for letting me come up here. My name is Ethan Lewis, and I live at 604 Beaufort Manor Drive, behind the Food Line in Beaufort. And again, thanks for letting me come here and speak. I want to talk about MENA Code Section 90.12, which negatively affects the homeless population in Beaufort, and I asked for it to be considered to be repealed. In this code, Section A, no person shall engage in any act of residing or sleeping in any automobile or vehicle on any street, highway, or property owned by the town. Section B, no person shall pitch a tent or erect a shelter on property owned by the town, except as expressly permitted by the town. Shelter shall include tents, tarps, lean-tos, sleeping bags, blankets, and any forms of cover or protection from the elements other than clothing. And in Section C, penalties for violation of this section, in addition to other remedies and penalties, which apply to violations of the town's code of ordinances. Any person violating the provisions of this section shall be subject to a civil penalty in the amount of $250, which must be paid within 10 days from the date on which the offending party is cited for the violation. The town will recover any such penalty in a civil action in the nature of a debt if the penalty is not timely paid in full. This law, in my opinion, is unjust and cruel, and it is another example of the sickness of our society and country, and I do not wish for it to fester in my town. Not only does our federal government take actions to push people into homelessness, with actions ranging from our past, such as Ronald Reagan pushing drugs into black neighborhoods, and how our government actively defunds mental health services, and has allowed the opioid epidemic to flourish, and the general rise in costs for basic goods to rent, houses, groceries, gas, and anything in general. And with all these difficulties, plus many more, I don't have time to mention, how can I trust the elected officials in Beaufort when they can't support their constituents and citizens in their toughest hour? Remember, the average American is 3 paychecks away from being homeless. Your constituents aren't immune to this crisis this country is facing. And I feel like y'all would rather protect tourism because it is unsightly to see homeless people either on the streets or behind woods and houses. And I genuinely think that instead of chasing profits and having dingbatters come in for tourism, the right thing should be done to stop criminalizing these people. Not to mention, you'd be sending decent people off to prison if they can't pay their fines because they're homeless. And if these people can't afford to buy housing, I genuinely think that a $250 fine would be detrimental and push these people into worse states of living. And in North Carolina prisons, they will be exploited by our prison system. In North Carolina, we pay our prisoners slave wages, ranging from 5 cents to 38 cents an hour for their work, sending them off to many corporations that fly under the banner of the United States, one being McDonald's, which benefits from prison labor in their supply chains. This is a reminder that slavery was never banned in this country, it just took on a different version. And this town, unfortunately, is helping its cogs turn. And in the 13th Amendment, in Section 1, neither slavery nor involuntary servitude except as a punishment for a crime whereof the party shall have been duly convicted shall exist within the United States or any place subject to their jurisdiction. It's right there, except as a punishment for a crime. And in this country, unfortunately, we have one of the highest rates of incarceration compared to countries that have populations vastly higher than ours. And not everyone in there is murderers, thieves, and rapists. It's just statistically, there are people in there like that, but it's not, I do not believe that it is the wide majority. Because if we as a nation, as a state, and as a county, and as a municipality will arrest people and fine them just for being homeless, it's unfortunately fueling the system.
Mr. Lewis, I'm sorry to say, but your 3 minutes are up. We'd love to continue this conversation.
Okay.
However,
I hope you all will consider repealing it in the future.
okay, thank you so much.
Allie Kristen.
Ally. Once again, state your name and address. We'll start the clock.
Sure, thank you. I'm Allie Kristan from on Meeting Street, which famously floods, as we talked about earlier. I'm here today. I have the lovely Betta and Abby and Chris here with me, and I'll tell you guys there were like 20 other people who said that they would be here or were on their way to be here and had other things going on, but I am speaking on behalf of a larger group. We're here about wanting to ask again, this time publicly, for your help in preserving the old growth live oak tree on the edge of the property on 406. 406? Anyway, yeah, 406 live oak tree. I know that it's just one tree and we have a lot bigger battles ahead here in Beaufort, but I think it matters. I think preserving our natural history matters, and I think this tree matters, and what the public wants matters too, so that's why I'm here speaking today. It sounded at the start that there was an issue with not being able to keep this tree because there are 9 parking spaces required for this kind of building. I mentioned that at the planning board, and the planning board seemed open to making modifications or maybe making some spaces compact so we could keep this tree. But then we were told from the owner that an arborist had said paving over the roots and trimming back the branches would kill the tree. There are live oaks at the Beaufort Courthouse that are also paved around pretty much completely in many other places in coastal North Carolina, and they seem to have been doing fine for many years. And there are alternatives that we wish to be considered, such as making the entire parking lot porous, which is better for flooding and stormwater runoff anyway, also mentioned at the planning board meeting, or just making it porous immediately around the tree. And then as far as trimming the tree, if you look at the site plan on page 52 and 53, it looks like the building itself doesn't begin until 49 feet into the property. There's parking spaces and then a drive. And I just did, rudimentary measurements on the property line of No Name Pizza, but it looks like the tree is 7 to 9 feet into the property, has a 2 to 3 foot diameter, and then the branches extend another 20 to 30 feet. So that's a maximum of about 43 feet. So it seems like the branches wouldn't be interfering with the building, since it doesn't begin until 49 feet in. At the very least, we could trim the branches back a little bit and see what happens and fit the building as is and this life-giving tree that's been here for so many years. So I think that's at least worth trying. Plus, then you have the shade of this tree over the parking lot and the drive, and the apartment residents look out their window and see a beautiful tree. So that seems like a win-win for everybody. I'm a bit perplexed about why that doesn't seem possible yet. And I think, especially with the property owner being here in Beaufort, the health of the tree is something that could be monitored. And if it seems like it's becoming unhealthy, you can cut it down at that point, but it's at least worth a try since we'll all be here keeping an eye on things and they don't just die overnight. The tree also very strongly leans away from the neighboring property into the building that will be built. It's completely moving that way. So I just think it falling onto the other property is very unlikely. But yeah, I know this is just one tree and there are a lot bigger battles ahead, but it's a beloved tree that's very publicly visible right on Cedar Street and Live Oak Street, and a lot of us had a lot of celebrations under it when it was the periwinkle, so this feels very significant and symbolic and involved in the community. I think this building will be a huge asset to Beaufort. Everyone loves Mr. Fasolino's other building on Cedar Street. Historic grounds is my jam. But I think there is space to create this building and preserve our natural history at the same time, which is what the people of Beaufort want, as evidenced in page 177 in the LDO, which mentions tree protection. The planning board was very wary of cutting down a live oak on Live Oak Street when few remain. We're starting to redevelop Beaufort, and this project comes from one of Beaufort's own, so I think that we should be setting the right precedent now, especially from things in our own town, to preserve our old-growth trees, which cannot be replaced simply by planting new saplings and hoping that the area hasn't flooded them out before they can grow as big as this one in the next 200 years. So my request is that if the owner is not willing to reconsider tree protection, which understandably, is not required. He's legally able to cut down the tree tonight if he wants to, so I understand this is asking above and beyond legal requirements. But if he's not willing to reconsider that to benefit the public and the environment, it is possible the commissioners could designate this tree as an exceptional specimen tree per LDO section 18.B.5. And stressing again that it seems like it's possible to both preserve this tree and build on it largely as planned and create a win-win for everybody. So thank you for your time.
Okay, appreciate it. Okay, that's the end of public comment. Is there another? Oh, well, sure. Go ahead. Just state your name and address and.
My name's Rusty Quaid, 119 Gallons Point Road. During the conversation earlier about the annexation for the jail, we were talking about 2% of the sewer capacity is what the jail would be taking. Is that of the available capacity, the gross capacity, and how much is left over? And has there been a study to see if the existing line will take on the new development that Commissioner Cooper has talked about? That's what my question is. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. We'll have to get your name and address so that we could have that as a topic of conversation. So this is something that we're working out, and we'll be answering those same questions as we go along. Okay. All right, so now we're going to close public comment and move on to new business. The first one is the proposed FY 2026 budget.
Thank you, Mayor. Commissioners, you should have documentation available to you both in printed form as well as an electronic form that have been sent over. What we wanted to do tonight, if you are amenable, is present to you the 100,000-foot level of the current data that we do have in anticipation of a workshop session that would be slated for this coming Thursday at 4 o'clock. So if that's okay, I'd like to go over these numbers at a very high level. So our 2024-2025 current budget versus what our proposed 26 budget would include is a proposed staff budget at $20,700,000. This is showing a proposed tax rate of 33 cents to balance. What's critical to point out is the adjustment on our real property value. This is a moving target. The current property value on the books as of the existing budget is right at $1.1 billion with a B. The total, which would be upcoming, is a taxable valuation near $2.15 billion. And so the question that the majority of our constituents would want to know is, what is the proposed revenue neutral tax rate? Considering the growth over the last 4 years, including a potential of a 7% holdback, the revenue neutral tax rate was calculated just shy of 29 cents. So I know Mr. Oliver will keep me humble, and it is a 28.884 rounded to 29 in this sake and discussion. So I want to thank Commissioner Oliver. He was helpful to us as a staff as we were working through this to make sure we captured every bit of the data that came through the county. But for the sake of the slide that's before you, it's currently showing a revenue neutral tax rate of 29 cents. So I'd like to pause and ask Mayor if there's any questions about this high level at this point. So a proposed balanced budget near 20.7 million with a balanced rate set at 33, but a neutral rate of 29. If that makes sense, I could continue, but I would like to stop and ask if there's any questions from the board.
Any questions from the board at this point in time?
Well,
Is it
If
29
28
with the new calculation?
Yes, sir. Just want to verify that everybody on the board is comfortable that we had to take in the most recent data that I believe in our notes was on the May 5th provision from the county. And I want to point out that I'd like to thank County Manager Griffin. I sat with her face-to-face for over an hour, and we went through a lot of detail. Rolled up in your revenue-neutral tax rate is going to be all the new real property valuations, and all the exclusions have been deducted. Exclusions equate to any property that would be deducted from the scrolls as non-taxable paying, so for example, a church or a government entity. And then what we have to assume is there's a majority of people that will not appeal, but there is a percentage that will potentially appeal their new tax rate. So if they have filed and met that, there could be a chance for this number to come down. And probability is this number will be coming down, and a conservative holdback is potentially at 7%. So that's what we've calculated in the revenue neutral rate at 29 cents.
Okay, rounding to 29. Oh, that would add about at least another $500,000 to the current 2.8.
No, sir. So what I'm saying is that the math, when you ran it out, was 28.884 cents. So it's a little bit difficult to have conversation when you're bouncing back and forth. So we're saying that the revenue neutral rate is 29. That's all. Just 16 tenths of a cent, just for the sake of the discussion. Yes, sir. And again, you can set the rate wherever you want to.
Just for the sake of discussion, that's what we're looking at doing, 29.
Well, we proposed with all the items that the staff had assembled in the draft budget, and is at 33 cents, and you have a list of items that we could cut to get us at from 33 cents all the way down to 29. And that's assuming that there was not going to be any provision or usage of fund balance to offset any of the costs.
Commissioner Spiegler?
Thank you, Matt. Appreciate you providing these numbers. So with the appeal process, are you saying this number the revenue neutral of 29 cents could change again? Or that's pretty much, does this number include the appeals now?
Yes, ma'am. So what we're saying is 29 cents is the most accurate number this board will receive in advance of the deadline to set a budget by June 30th of 2025.
Including the whole.
It is including the whole
Will
back.
it change again after we've set the budget?
I guarantee you that something will change. We just can't predict to you how it will. So what you have to do is, when setting the budget this time of year in a reval season, you have to take the best data that you have. And so that's why, whether you want to discuss it at 28.884 or 29 cents, there will be movement, and it's impossible to calculate where that will land because it's due to the appeals process.
Right.
There will be a change.
So the public understands, we will set the budget with this information. However, when the data from the appeals comes through after we've set the budget, these numbers could change slightly.
What will actually change, in my opinion, is the collections.
Right, correct, correct.
It's who, that's what's going to ultimately change it. This is a budget.
So our budget will not necessarily change, but the amount of money that we are getting from property taxes could change based on the appeals, but we won't know that until we've passed the budget.
So we're going to pull up a different chart. It's a great question, and we can answer it very detailed. There you have it. So I know this is going to be extremely difficult to see from the audience, but there is a process to get to this determination. And so for Commissioner Spiegler, to answer your direct question, this is the most accurate that either our staff and/or the county team can get to. So they're pulling data down real time, and so our number has moved a little bit, but what it tells you is that based on the current value, assuming that up to 7% of these numbers could be arbitrated down through the appeals process, that to collect our taxes necessary to be equal to today, it's rated a 29-cent tax rate.
Okay, thank you.
I hope, does that help?
Yes,
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
And there's one more that I'd put in that if you don't mind.
Sure.
In addition, you're putting in, you're assuming, we would be assuming a collection rate less than 100%. A collection rate of 98.55% is what you've used.
So you rarely have 100% actual collection, and so we're seeing less than one.
At the time of when it's due, it always gets paid eventually.
So a collection rate at 98.55% has been calculated into this as well.
Now, is that collection rate higher than what we normally been seeing?
It's the same.
It's the same?
They're assuming the same as
As
it was
last
in
year.
the audit.
Okay. Any further questions from down here? John? Paula?
Discussion, but not question.
Okay.
No questions.
What do you want to discuss?
Well, for me, to get to the understanding of whether we're going to keep the rate at 29 or 30 or 31 or 32, and, Matt made a really good, basically, kind of wish list and things in the budget to basically understand, do we fund this, do we not fund this, what's needed, what's necessary, what's a want, and what's a need. I still need to do a sit down and go through this. Because this is still all the revenue and then all the expenses. I've got this whole thing marked up with questions.
That's great. So what our goal was tonight was to present this data and allow our commissioners a chance to absorb it all. So now that we have, the first and most critical step, and I want to apologize to the public, coming in, being 4 weeks into this conversation, we would have normally been potentially a month earlier, but the reality is the county's process of where it has been a little bit delayed, and this is not a blame on our sister agency, but we are at this point today where traditionally we'd present to you a balanced budget for first draft consideration, and we're just a few days behind. So to help all commissioners at this table, this is an extremely important topic. This is a very detailed topic. So what we wanted to do today is we provided the information prior to the weekend, wanted to present it to the public tonight, allow you to have 3 to 4 days to groom through this, and we'll be prepared to answer as many questions as detailed as possible on Thursday at the work session.
Okay. Any further comments?
No, I just want to say thank you to Matt and the rest of the staff, Christy, for getting all this information to us before the weekend. It was really helpful to have it printed out, so thank you.
If there is any high-level questions, any pieces of data that may be missing, and we would want to try to work to get you that, to make sure you have all the data that you need on Thursday to engage in serious discourse, we'd be glad to do that.
I'll
So
email you
email
a
them.
list.
That'd be perfect, yep, absolutely. And so for the public, if you want to pull up our red line list, what Commissioner LaPiccolo is referencing is staff goes through a budgetary process, usually beginning late December, 1st of January. They have a council retreat, try to figure out goals and prioritization as we move forward, and all the items that staff identified that may be necessary when totaled up equal to roughly a plus or minus tax rate at 33 cents. And so if we were to fund 100% of those items, it would need to be rated at 33 cents. And if Elizabeth could help us scroll down, what we went through is we started to redline items and what we would do if it was 32, and then you can keep going 31, 30, down to 29. So we tried to prioritize these items based on what the highest and most important need was put in at 30 cents, and then the second highest needs went in at 31. So there's always a conversation to move these items around. The council has full control as to how and what we will fund in the upcoming year. And we're talking about a budget cycle that begins July 1st, 2025, and runs 12 months to June 30th, 2026. It's really a roadmap, or our plan is how we would navigate the needs, concerns, and improvements within the town of Beaufort over the course of that 12-month period. So we tried to make this conversation a little bit cleaner and easier by giving you a rough prioritization of those items. And then we also did the same on the utility side as we were talking about the potential for employees and or pieces of equipment that would be needed, and we've redlined those areas as well. And we can answer any questions electronically in advance of the meeting and then bring those conversation points to the public on Thursday as well.
Just want to point out, that's like the cliff notes of the larger ticket items that are on the list.
And there was a series of conversations held, so as you've already indicated, I'd be remiss. I'm just the general that has the opportunity to present the data, and I would like to say thank you to staff who has been extremely brilliant and welcoming into this conversation. It's moving at a very swift pace is an understatement, and trying to answer all the questions that are currently in place. So the line item budget, a much thicker document, and gets into the granular detail of who, what, when, where, why, and how. And we will work through that together as a team on Thursday. And again, thank you. If there's anything more that you needed, just please let us know.
Yeah, and appreciate the detail and transparency with all that.
Yes, sir.
And just so for the public that is interested in hearing more about the budget, we are having a budget work session this Thursday at 4 o'clock here at the train depot. So it is open to the public, and would love to be able to have you come in and hear where we are in the process. Eventually, this will be open for public review, so we're just, as Matt has mentioned, we are just kind of working through the generals part of it, and then we'll get an opportunity for the public to chime in on it at some point in time. Is there any further questions about the budget?
I'd like to make a comment about it.
Sure.
First of all, I want to share with our community the fact that, in my opinion, our new manager, Matt Zapp, has had a fire hose in his mouth for every second that he's been here, and so has Chrissy. And I'm a self-admitted pain in the neck on budget items, and I will share that I have every question that I've asked, and there have been a lot, Christy, Matt, every question that I've asked through to noon today has been answered. I do look forward to the work session on Thursday. I think it's scheduled for 1 hour. I don't think we're going to make it.
I don't know why we even plan on scheduling meetings with us. When 5 of us get together or 6 of us get together, we just throw the clock out the window.
Okay, I will share one additional math fact. The difference between 28.84 cents rate
AKA
and
29.
33-cent rate is 14.42%. So our tax bills, depending on where we end up between these two starting points, if there in fact are starting and ending points, the difference between 28.84 and 33 is a tax bill that changes by 14.42%. Everybody at this table is taking this very seriously to try to make sure that we represent everybody in the town, because the setting of this budget and the setting of this rate and other things that we're going to be looking at in this budget process affects every citizen of this town financially. And I think, and everybody knows it. And I have met with some folks, and I've asked for their comments and suggestions, and I've gotten them. And each of those will be presented when we start on Thursday. So Matt, Christie, I thank you for the patience putting it up with me after hours. There was even a text in the middle of the night that I rudely sent. But I wanted to say that every question that I've made has been answered, and anybody that wants to share anybody, it's all right here, and anybody is welcome to take any look and provide suggestions. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Well said. Any further comments before we move on? Okay, so now we're going to move on to the Pamlico Sound Regional Hazard Mitigation Plan adoption. And it looks like we have Michelle up for that.
Good evening. This item is a little bit easier to get through.
Finally.
So the Pamlico Sound Regional Hazard Mitigation Plan, or the HMP, the Hazard Mit Plan, is a cooperative regional plan updated every 5 years in accordance with FEMA requirements. The Hazard Mitigation Plan establishes the vision and guiding principles for reducing hazard risk and proposes specific mitigation actions to eliminate or reduce identified vulnerabilities. So the Pamlico Sound region is comprised of Beaufort, Carteret, Craven, and Pamlico counties. So the town of Beaufort was represented by 2 staff members and 2 citizen stakeholders, Commissioner Spiegler, as were all responding municipalities and counties. So we had a lot of people at the table with creating this plan. This plan updates our current 2020 hazard mitigation plan and has been created in accordance with requirements in order to maintain communities' eligibility for funding programs. Guidance and mitigation actions in the plan are consistent with the town's efforts and adopted guidance. Are there any questions for staff prior to adoption of the resolution?
Okay, let's find out. Commissioner LoPiccolo?
No question.
Thank you. Commissioner Gilligan?
No questions.
Commissioner Spiegler, and thank you for serving on this committee.
I don't have any questions, but I want to say thank you to Michelle as well for her efforts on this. It was a long, involved process. We were just two little parts of the process. The consulting company, I believe it was WSP.
WSP and ESP.
Yeah, and ESP. They did a great job on this. It is a long document, but Carteret County and Beaufort are both well represented in this plan. There's a list of mitigation. Here we go. What we're going to talk about for our UDO. There's a list of mitigation actions that starts on page 368 for Carteret County. Goes through different counties, but Carteret County starts on page 368. And for example, Beaufort's efforts in updating our UDO with resilience measures is listed as an example of mitigation effort that's taking place currently in the county. And there's other examples of other actions that counties and municipalities in this region are undertaking. So I think it was a really great effort. I do think we can use, and Michelle, I'm sure you're already doing this and thinking about it. We can take some of what is listed and suggested in here as we're doing our UDO update. They obviously go together and can complement each other. So I just want to say I think this is a great document and very pleased with the product that they developed.
Thank you. Commissioner Oliver?
No questions, thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Cooper? All right. So when it comes down to adopting the resolution for the Pamlico Sound Regional Hazard Mitigation Plan, what is the pleasure of the board?
I would make a motion to move forward with the adoption of this plan.
We've got a motion on the floor. Any further questions? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed have the same right. So we have beat the deadline, right? Before expired.
We sure have.
We have 3 days.
We can continue getting funding following disasters.
Ooh,
Excellent.
that's important, that's important. Okay, now we're going to move on to case number 25-02. That's 406 Live Oak Street, mixed-use site plan.
Excellent. This is a site plan review for a mixed-use development, 406 Live Oak Street, requested by Vic Fasolino, President of Property Owner, Sound Shore Construction, Inc. 406 Live Oak is at the northeast corner of Live Oak and Cedar. It is developed currently with a small commercial building and gravel parking lot, formerly the site of the Periwinkle. The zoning district for the subject property is Cedar Street Mixed Use. Abutting zoning districts are Cedar Street Mixed Use, Transitional, and General Business. The site plan, which I've got a lot of the details of the site plan listed on this slide, but I've also got the site plan screenshotted on some of the future slides, so if we need to ping back and forth through these. We've got one mixed-use building where the ground floor is three commercial units, a little over 1,000 square feet. The top floor are three 1,100 square foot rental apartments. One's a 1-bedroom and 2 are 2 bedrooms. We've got a parking lot where the traffic flow was required that particular way by DOT, so they've approved that with their driveway permit. We've got 8 standard parking spaces and 1 handicap accessible space. And just to point out, we've got some alternative allowances in this plan. There's a requested no loading or unloading space that's typically required in the LDO for commercial buildings, all commercial buildings regardless of use. Landscaping and buffering, we've got a alternative type A opaque buffer along the east property line. No other property line buffers are required due to the adjacent development and zoning districts. We've got an updated landscaping plan to include the planning board's recommended native species for those trees, and then additional vehicle accommodation area landscaping. We've got LED lighting above signboards and in the parking lot, rollout carts for trash service, and the sidewalk would be expanded in that area to meet the existing sidewalk that's on site. Just to identify for the no loading and unloading space, I had originally put subsection 5 in the staff report. I see that it's subsection 2 that we're identifying for that alternative request. stating that the small commercial units are not going to need a loading or unloading zone, basically the big truck loading. So the applicant has requested accommodation under that. And the planning board did recommend that that be accepted. The applicant has also requested alternative design for the type A opaque buffer on the east property line. It's required because of the adjacent use as a residential, even though the adjacent property is within the same zoning district. So just to clarify on that, the type A buffer either is 20 feet wide with a certain number of plantings, or no more than at least 10 feet wide with a fence and that same number of plantings. The request is for a reduced width with the same number of plantings, and some fencing is proposed. Can't really see it on this slide as much as I would have liked to. On the top, I've got highlighted in yellow are the existing fencing line on the adjacent property. There's some fencing in that backyard and in the front yard. And then the applicant is proposing to introduce a fence on the subject property to complete that fencing line. So there would be fencing either on the subject property or on the adjacent property, and the same number of required plantings that are required for the type A buffer, but reduced in size. So that is the request for the alternate design that the applicant is identifying. Sub 3 will ensure the screening/buffering intentions of these standards. And the planning board did recommend that that alternate design be accepted. So we come to the discussion about the tree, and I can discuss it as it relates to the LDO and ordinances for that. It's come up a few times through the review process. There are tree preservation regulations that designate the tree as a private protected tree, being greater than 8 inches diameter breast height, DBH, and allows for an additional exceptional specimen tree designation, either by the Board of Commissioners or staff. It's conflicting in different places in the ordinance. I don't feel that the ordinance gives us standards by which to approve or deny requests to remove or preserve these trees. So that's something that we're going to be placing a lot of importance on in drafting the UDO, making sure our tree preservation and landscaping reflects the intent for our community. During staff review phase of this application, we encourage the applicant to attempt to include the tree in site design. The applicant provided background and reasoning that the tree, both the canopy and the root system, would impact not only the parking spaces, but the drive aisle and potentially the building itself, potentially not allowing the proposed development as it's shown. The applicant further provided the arborist opinion at the planning board meeting that we were discussing earlier. The applicant worked with the landscape architect following the planning board's review to propose the native trees on the property. I'll let the applicant further discuss the choice to not keep the tree, but I wanted to provide some background on staff's review of the site plan. And the plan that we see in front of us is marked up red to show those tree changes. The planning board reviewed this site plan and recommended it for approval with those 2 adjustments and the native trees. The applicant revised the landscaping plan as shown. I'll be happy to answer any questions that the board may have prior to the applicant's presentation.
Okay. Thank you, Michelle. We'll start with Commissioner Lopiccolo. Any questions?
Were there any requests or is anything listed about lighting and lumen and, of the parking lot at specific lumens or specific brightness of the lights?
A lighting plan was not provided.
Not provided.
They were specified, but the lighting plan was not provided with the light map or anything.
Another question about the tree. Obviously, the live oaks do have shallow root systems, but curious about the change in the trees up front. If you go back to the diagram that lists the crepe myrtles and the eastern redbud and the live oaks, is he required to put in those specific trees in those locations, or is he just only required to put native trees in those locations?
There's a certain quantity of sizes of trees that are required as part of the vehicle accommodation area. It is recommended in our ordinance that those native species be provided, and I think that that's what the applicant reflected in those revisions. Previously, the planning board, identified that one of the choices was an invasive species, and they wanted to see that changed, and they recommended that you have live oaks on Live Oak Street and cedars on Cedar Street.
Right, but is he specifically required to put live oaks on live oak?
They recommended it.
Recommend it, so it
Yes,
doesn't
sir.
have to. Okay. My concern with putting live oaks in that location is the size of the canopy too of a live oak, and also that they do have shallow root systems, and it could buckle the sidewalks in those locations and then create another hazard down the road. There's other trees I think that would be more suitable into that area, and have some recommendations for Mr. Vasolino if he wants to chat about that later on. But I don't want to require that of him. That's my only comment.
Thank you. Commissioner Gilligan?
Could this board hear from the applicant, first of all?
We will hear from the applicant. Right now, it's just technical questions
Okay.
for Michelle.
Yep.
Yeah.
Just want to make sure we can do that. And was there any discussion about manipulating parking with you in relation to the tree? Or was that all at the planning board?
We discussed it early on in the application process before it went to TRC, before it got to planning board, with regard to the tree, and the applicant maintained that it wasn't possible to remove parking spaces and keep the tree, just it wouldn't have enough space to accommodate the tree as it sprawls currently.
Okay, was it vertical space? Do you remember?
I'm sorry?
Was it overhang, or was it?
There's some issue with the overhang, just as far as being able to get emergency vehicles through, how far it comes down, but more so the 9 parking spaces that are required for that development. I think that some accommodation could be made there, but there would be the number of spaces that would have to be removed to accommodate for the tree may make the development difficult to maneuver with. If you've got, 3 apartments, 2 or 2-bedroom, and then also the commercial units. I think 9 is an appropriate number for parking spaces, and that's the area of Cedar Street, on this side of Live Oak where we have the on-street parking. It's not extended on that side of Live Oak on Cedar Street, so they don't get the benefit of that on-street parking that we've provided on so much of Cedar.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Spiegler?
Did I just hear you correctly, Michelle? So you're saying that 9 parking spaces is appropriate for 3 units?
6 units.
There's 6 units? I
Yes.
thought there were 3 units.
Well, there's 3 apartments and 3 commercial units.
Okay, but for long-term overnight parking, there's 3 units, right? There's the commercial
3
ones, they wouldn't
dwelling
be
units.
parking overnight, is that correct?
I'm sorry?
So the commercial units are just for like short-term use for parking?
Daytime,
Daytime.
Ideally, yeah.
So
We're not
in
sure what
my
the use
mind,
will be.
You would need long-term parking for 3 units, and to me, 9 spaces for 3 units seems like overkill. I'm hearing Ryan Mead from our planning board saying that. I think there's plenty of parking on the street. As a commercial user, when I go down there, I have to find a parking spot on the street when I go to historic grounds or wherever. So to me, I would think 2 parking spaces for each of the residential units would be more than enough, so that's 6. 1 more would be 7. If there's any way to accommodate both the tree and the parking spaces, I'd really like to see that happen, if that would be the solution. And I'm not saying it is, but if that would be the solution to this, keeping the tree, I would like to discuss decreasing the number of parking spaces as an option. I think you had the slide up. So this site plan does meet the requirements of the town's LDO, is that correct?
Yes, they're asking for accommodation under 2, so that's kind of an alternate plan on those, but otherwise, we have UDO compliance, it's run through technical review committee, and all the departments have signed off on it. There.
And did I also hear you say earlier that part of the way that our ordinances are currently written, it does make it challenging to designate a tree such as this as a special designation tree, either by the commissioners or by staff, and that if as we are updating our ordinances, we can better reflect our vision for protecting these types of trees in our future UDO update.
It specifies how to designate them and then doesn't really give good direction on what to do from there.
So in the future, if we were having this conversation a couple of years from now about a tree on a property like this, we might have better guidance of how to move forward, but because of how the ordinances are written right now, we don't have great guidance.
As far as I can read them, yes, and I'm willing to defer to our legal counsel if I'm looking at it incorrectly, but tree protection ordinances can be really tough in North Carolina, just with what we're allowed to do by statute. But that's definitely something that we're going to be looking for, and almost providing incentives for tree preservation, and then looking at that in the context of the NIZ.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Oliver?
What is the parking requirement for a two-bedroom unit?
Outside of the Cedar Street mixed use is 2.
Two.
2 per dwelling unit.
And in this zone, it is how many?
1.5 per mixed use units, commercial and residential.
So for a two-bedroom unit, it will be how many?
2. I'm sorry?
I couldn't hear you.
It would be 1.5 per unit
For each two-bedroom unit?
for each unit, regardless of number of bedrooms.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, sir.
That's the only question I have.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Cooper?
Yeah, the only thing I would have a problem with, Commissioner Spiegler, is getting into a tree ordinance. I think that would just be opening up a can of worms that we just don't want to. Understand we need to, save our trees, and hopefully we can have that done by whoever is developing the property to have some sense of being able, wanting to save that rather than us designating a tree and to prevent it from being cut down. That's the only question I have.
Unless there's any further questions for Michelle, we'll move on to the applicant, Mr. Fasolino. Guess what we're going to ask you? You'll never know. All right, we'll start with Commissioner LaPiccolo.
Good evening, Mayor and
If
Commissioners.
you will, yeah.
Good evening, Vic. I guess go ahead and start.
You
Talk
will
about,
ahead, start.
Your experience with the tree, what you learned, how it's located, or where it's located, the structure of the tree, the concerns. Go for it.
Okay, I'd like to clarify, I guess, a few things that I have heard. The parking requirement in the mixed-use zone is for 1.5 parking places per unit, not bedrooms or commercial. So I have 6 units, it's therefore required to be 9. Now, if we can bring up the site plan, do I have control with the clicker? Oh, I do. Oh, let's go backwards. Okay. The tree, let's see now, that's pretty light.
I think there's another slide with the tree.
It's another drawing, it's
Yeah,
got,
there's another drawing.
no,
No, no,
No.
Where is it?
get left out.
Should be the landscape plan.
There you go.
There you go.
Okay, so the tree on that plan is in the 1, 2, 3. It's on the joint between the 1, 2, 3, the third and the fourth parking places. So to save the tree, we would have to give up a minimum of 2 parking places to be able to leave the tree there. But there's other issues. I heard Ms. Kristen say that the building is 49 feet forward of the back property line. It's actually 35 feet forward of the back property line. She's absolutely correct. The tree is in about 6 feet, and the tree is 2 feet in diameter, but the total branch spread comes out 39 feet into the lot. So we would have to prune the tree no matter what in order to build the building where the building is. Once the building is built, the tree would be behind the building and not visible anyway. Let's see. The planning board recommended that, okay, if you take the tree out, we should get your landscaping more into native species. And they suggested live oak on Live Oak Street and cedar on Cedar Street. Well, cedar, so I met with George Stanziel, the landscape architect, and also a member of the planning board. And cedar on Cedar Street just doesn't work because they are massive trees and they would be up into the electrical wires very quickly. Now, where we indicated 2 new live oak trees, is that, in my opinion, the best place for a live oak tree? No, it's not, because 15 years down the road, those live oak trees are going to be rubbing on the roof of the building. But if you look in the real light printing, a vehicle access area, there's a major calculation that you do, and we are required to put in 1 large tree, 4 large shrubs, and 5 small shrubs. So that's a total of, we would have to legally put in 10 plants. We're proposing 90 plants on the site because we want it to look very natural with a lot of plantings and not have a lot of paved areas. That would bring us to look very much like 806 Cedar Street. Now, in all those plantings, one of them is required to be a large tree. We had originally specified the one closest to No Name Pizza to be an American holly, which is a large tree and is a native tree and is specified in our ordinance. The planning board felt that was not appropriate, and it should be a live oak tree, so we switched to live oak trees. If we go back and take a look at what that existing live oak tree looks like. Okay, this is a photo of the live oak tree taken with your back to No Name Pizza. We had an arborist, David Styron, come out and look, and he looked at that and he said, well, he said, you got a bit of a problem here because the tree basically branches into 3 main branches. One goes backward over the gentleman that owns No Name Pizza also owns the property in back of this property behind that white fence. That one limb comes out and goes backwards that way. The other 2 main limbs come out over our property. But Mr. Styron's opinion was if you lop off that long, tall, vertical branch there, you're cutting off so much of the tree that the tree will inevitably die, especially if you put a parking lot over half of its roots. Okay, if the tree dies, the piece that's sticking out to the back comes down on our neighbor's property, and it's really the only piece of the tree, a significant piece of the tree that would be left after we pruned it. That branch to the ground is maybe 9 feet. It's really close to the ground. And I can show, that's a picture of the live oak tree looking the opposite direction, looking toward No Name Pizza. And as you can see, the 39 feet that the tree comes out on the lot is all that canopy that comes out forward. So I would say that the tree is kind of a hazard in a hurricane. If that big limb should come down, it's going to come down in the parking lot. So I'm inclined to agree with Mr. Styron's opinion that in this particular case, that may not be the best tree to save. And we are planning on putting in many additional trees. We're proposing 3, 5, 7 alternate large trees around the perimeter in the front of the building. I'd also point out that years ago, Beaufort wanted to become a tree city, and they formed a tree committee under Charlie Burgess and Laura Hermley. I was not on the tree committee, but my wife was. And they did get a tree city designation. After that, Mr. Blackley, who was doing the Boco subdivision, donated 50 trees to the town, and the town planted them all over the place. And the first year, we lost 25% of those trees. Somebody from the tree committee called me and said, hey, why don't we get together and start a volunteer group of waterers who will water trees and keep them living because the town doesn't have the staff to do it. So we did. We formed a group. We called ourselves the Tremendous Beaufort Volunteers, and we started watering trees. Well, that was so successful that in 2016 we planted trees, 2017 we planted trees, and 2018 we planted trees. And over that 5-year period, we planted almost 145 trees. What do those trees look like today? Well, these are trees on Marsh Street. These are trees that we planted around the firehouse. These are trees on the end of Mulberry at Craven. So the trees do grow, and they grow pretty quickly if they are appropriately taken care of. But what we learned while we were doing that is a saying that apparently most people that try to plant trees already know. You have to plant the right tree in the right place. And what's the right tree? Well, the right tree is obviously one that handles the weather appropriately. Salt winds, live oak is the logical tree around us here. That's the right tree. What's the right place? Well, the right place, as we learned when we went putting stakes out and suggesting locations, the right place is the place where the citizens will allow it, because many citizens did not want some of those trees planted in front of their houses. They didn't want to clean up the leaves. They didn't want their view blocked. The right place is you have to have enough room to plant the tree and keep it alive and not let it lift up the curb and the sidewalk, because we had several people complain that you can't plant that there, it's going to ruin my sidewalk. So that saying about the right tree and the right place becomes very prevalent when we look at this tree. We're building a building that I anticipate will be there hopefully 100 years, right? There's a lot of structures in Beaufort that are there 100 years. Well, what will those trees that we plant now look like in 100 years? They will then be the right tree in the right place. But that particular tree, because of its current condition and the conflict we have because we want to redevelop Cedar Street and the Cedar Street Mixed Use District, is in conflict with planting the tree. So there's a balance there. And in my opinion, I think our building is very appropriate to the area. And once the trees grow in, I think it'll look absolutely fine. And if we can look 20 years down the road, I would say the trees we will be planting, except maybe for the live oaks in the front, would be more appropriate than just working around and saving that one tree that is fairly hazardous. Any other questions?
Thank you. And I appreciate you pointing out the tree planting that has performed over the past years. I want to point out that there wasn't any money allocated in the budget for trees this upcoming year, and I wanted to see if that was something we could look into, because I do believe that our community could revisit that again and look into planting the appropriate tree in the appropriate location, because that may have changed now.
I think that's a wonderful idea. I think the town absolutely should do it, and they should put it in the budget. But just to back up historically, what happened was we put in paid parking, and the first year all that money went to trees. Well, not all of it, but a majority of it went to trees. And we were planting 30 or 40 trees a year for under $10,000, because that's the cost of buying the trees, and pretty much volunteers were doing everything else. The paid parking money continued for several years, but then we ended up with a new town manager, and one of the stipulations to planting the trees became, well, you got to get 3 bids for this. And we couldn't find 3 nurseries who could supply us with straight trunk. Now, the right tree in the right place. The tree, if you're planting it near a street, needs to have a very straight trunk coming straight up before it branches. And the problem was we couldn't get 3 nurseries to bid on straight trunk, single trunk, live oak trees. And because of that, the town manager said, well, then we can't move forward. And we ended up not doing any more trees. So that's something to bear in mind when the town starts a new tree planting program.
Any further questions, Commissioner Piccolo?
No further questions.
All right, thank you. Commissioner Gilligan?
No further questions.
Thank you. Commissioner Spiegler?
Vic, thank you for your presentation. So I heard you say that the building that you're proposing, you think will fit in really well with the redevelopment of Cedar Street.
Yes.
Did you, however, consider changing the site plan to accommodate the tree, or is that, really set in stone what you're planning to build there?
Yes and yes. So yes, I do believe that that building fits very well in what at least I envision the redevelopment area to look like. We want stores downstairs and we want apartments upstairs. That's certainly true. The problem with the tree is the tree comes 39 feet into the lot and the lot is only 92 feet deep. So we're taking up 2/3 of the lot. Now, we could prune the tree back 5, 7 feet. That's great. Can we give up parking? We could ask the town for a concession on parking. I don't think I want to have a concession on parking. And the reason is we said, okay, so you need 2 cars each apartment. Well, except at 7 o'clock in the morning at 806 Cedar, the coffee shop opens the door. The employees need a place to park and the people in the apartments have not left. So those parking places don't become available during the day. And for the tenants, we have to designate and keep those parking places for them. So apartment A has this one and that one, and B has that one and that one. So it's not that it's just a free juggle of parking places, because inevitably the tenants would be unhappy if you couldn't guarantee them their parking places. What other public parking is there around this site? This is not as unique, or it's not as fortunate as 806 Cedar, where Historic Grounds Coffee is, because on 806 Cedar, with the islands they put in on Cedar Street, there is parking in front of Historic Grounds, and there is parking down Marsh Street. At this particular corner now, you're outside of the widening of Cedar Street, and the only public parking on the street is not Live Oak Street. It's going to be to go down Gordon Street or come back as far as 806 Cedar Street and grab some of those places. So are we really willing even to give up parking places? We're going to have a lot of dissatisfied tenants and store owners if we don't provide them with any parking.
Correct me if I'm wrong, 807 Cedar, where Historic Grounds Coffee is, it's
Yeah.
not very, it's like a 5-minute walk from the property we're talking about. It's really not far, and we talk a lot about in our community how we need to encourage people, right? We have this parking problem downtown, right? It's really it's a 5-minute walk, right, from Marsh Street over to the property you're talking about right now.
I agree with that, and I would walk it in a New York minute.
And in fact, you're
But-
one of the ones that often encourage us to think about how we can add, different and more parking and getting people to walk a little bit farther, right?
Absolutely correct, and I would recommend that, except what about my tenants who are paying rent? The guy drives up to his store and he's got no place to park.
Well, you make a convincing argument, don't you? So I think I've heard you say, too, that even if the town would consider decreasing the parking requirements, it wouldn't change your plan.
I don't think it would be appropriate to my tenants. I think they would be very dissatisfied.
Okay. Last question. So in the picture, and I don't know if you want to pull it back up, but so there are two smaller live oak trees, I think, to the right of the very large one that we're talking about, and they're much smaller, right? Is that correct, or do you
No,
consider
no.
them part of the tree?
You mean in the existing picture? Oh, there are other trees. I think one's a cherry.
Yep, I think yeah, you
There.
can see one of them there.
Okay, so that one that's very straight behind the live oak is a cherry tree, I believe. And yes, we are planning on taking that out also.
And the other one to the, I think there's two there. Possibly.
Oh, yeah, that's right. Yep, there's two. Yes, and we
So
are
all three
taking,
of those trees would be removed?
because we are planning on parking up to the property line and then planning the buffering. Because the parking is at an angle, let's see if we can get back to a site plan. Okay, so the parking places are at an angle, and that leaves us a triangle in front of each parking place where we can plant a tree or a shrub, and we're planning on wax myrtle, a local native, grows well, in each one of those places in front of the parking spot.
Okay. All right, that's all my questions.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Vic.
Oh, you're welcome.
Commissioner Oliver?
No questions.
Thank you. Commissioner Cooper?
Yes. Thanks, Vic. I do have a problem with the planning board in terms of two live oaks because that will cause a problem down the road. I can go with one, but not two. But we'll see.
Then let me make a suggestion. Can I plant one live oak on Live Oak Street and let it be the one on the corner on the left because there's no power lines there? So that's the logical place. And swap out live oak number 2 for a crepe myrtle because it's more appropriate to the location.
As a tree person that you are, I would give you a pass on that. I have a neighbor, and he thinks that Beaufort should be in the tree planting business. He certainly believes in trees, that we need more trees around here in Beaufort. than
I
anything
agree.
else. So I did not know that there was once a volunteer group around.
Yeah.
But yeah, he's always in, I walk with him every day, and every day he's talking about trees.
It's difficult to get permission from the
Right.
owners.
Okay. So I'm all about trees, but and seeing that live oak and what you're trying to do, I think you had to come down. Because
And I am sympathetic to what Ms. Kristen is saying, and I know Periwinkles has cultivated a very warm, friendly social space that gathered under that live oak tree. And there's a lot of ties there for having spent good family time there. I understand that.
And my other thing in terms of with parking, even right there on Turner, a couple of businesses' main complaint was the mere fact that their customers wasn't able to parking space. So it is critical that people have parking space. When you got a business, they want to be able to, they don't want to have to walk 50 feet or whatever. They want to be able to get out of their car and
Right.
walk to that business.
If we have 2 cars per apartment, that's 6. If we have 1 car for the owner of each business, that's 9. They can all be there at 8 o'clock in the morning, obviously. There's still no parking for customers.
Yeah, well, what is it? Something between a rock and a hard place?
I agree.
You know, because I mean, I can almost hear the tree people right now all in my head. You know, but I also have to sympathize with your problem of being able to provide one parking space and then safety as well, because we never know when one good hurricane come through here, boy. I mean, it could just, you know, wipe that tree out and a few other things right along with it. I don't know, Vic.
Any further questions for Mr. Vassalino?
Are crepe myrtles natives? In my experience, they're not. They're not invasive, but they're not native.
I think you're right. Crepe myrtles are not, yeah.
But we got a lot of them around here.
Oh, yeah.
They're
That
pretty.
is true, but that doesn't mean that half of them look like they're about half dying because they're not as tolerant.
That's
as
because
some
Vicky had to
native
stop
plants.
watering them. Vicky never stopped watering them.
Yeah, what I was getting at, I was thinking about the 2 live oaks in front there, and if it went down to 1, what the other companion tree could be, because.
How about a red bud, an eastern red bud, because that's what's around the other corner on the proposed landscape plan? No, I'm not sure.
What about the root structure of eastern red bud with the sidewalk? Would that be better?
I have, I think, a 12-foot by 12-foot planting area that's wide open, and the trees are going in the center. Again, just like 806 Cedar, there's planting bed areas, and the red bud is in the middle of a 12 by 12 area. That's pretty ample.
Yeah. I would, if we're gonna come off of the 2 live oaks, I would request a native instead of a crepe myrtle.
No, I wouldn't go crepe
Okay.
myrtle, but I just can't see them putting 2 live oaks right there, because 50 years down the road, what they say, boy, it'd be.
Somebody's going to come to you and say, I got to cut that tree down.
We don't
Well,
want to
yeah,
go
it'd be
backwards.
buckling at the sidewalk and everything else, and probably out to the curb, and who knows, the root system, for that tree is awesome, so, it could get wrapped around our infrastructure down in, towards the sewer lines and et cetera.
So do we want to specify what that native would be, or leave that up to the discretion of the developer?
I think Dick could handle that. I
Yeah.
think he hear us on that, and wouldn't put something there that, we may have to come back and tell him to get rid of.
Yeah, I'd trust the discretion. It would just be better if it was native rather than.
Okay, so 1 live oak and 1 native.
Okay.
Any further questions for the applicant? All right.
Yeah, I want to make a final
Sure.
comment that this issue has been really tough for me as a tree lover and an oak tree lover, but I also know you, Vic, and the way you've developed around our town has been pretty darn responsible. And I've brought up to people the amount of trees that you've planted in our community and the amount of donations that you've done. Your stewardship has been like way over 300%. So I feel like that does mean something to me. And it does mean something to me that you've got 90 plants in your plan rather than 10. That does mean a lot to me. So just want to acknowledge to you that I acknowledge your stewardship, and it's a hard place to be.
It is. I'm glad I'm on this side and not on that side.
Yeah, it's hard.
I know,
We switch
guys.
places, actually.
Because look out there, like I said, I can hear all in my ear. And I want you to try to understand. I mean, it's not easy, but the decision does have to be made. And I think that tree, for the safety and convenience of you being able to build your building there, I think that tree may have to come out. I mean, the sad thing, I like trees too. I think it provides trees provide a lot of things for us in terms of the atmosphere and green space, but there's sometimes when but you're replacing with a lot of stuff too. So I appreciate that.
Well, thank you very much. We're going to
Okay.
let you get out of the hot seat.
Thank you.
And we're going to start talking about this particular project so that we can move on to the next one. Unless there's any further deliberation between board members, what is the pleasure of the board when it comes down to the case number 2502, the redevelopment of 406 Live Oak Street? Any conditions you want to add to it other than the fact that 1 live oak and 1 native would go onto the live oak side? Okay. Any other conditions or concerns that we need to add to this before going into a vote?
Forgive me on my vote.
Okay, noted. Okay, so let's kind of have a motion so we can forgive him on his vote.
Mayor, I'd like to make a motion that we proceed with the one necessary change of one live oak and one native for case number 25-02406 live oak, that we approve the site plan.
Okay, we've got a motion on the floor. Any further questions? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed have the same right. We're all going to take pictures around this tree. I just want to let you know. It's just,
Tonight,
not tonight.
We're sorry.
But I have several of them in my yard that look just like that, and I understand cutting on them is not doing justice to that tree. So let's move on to case number 2508, which is the Front Street Village Phase 3 site plan. And before we start the discussion, I would like to get a motion to excuse Commissioner Oliver from the discussion and the vote on this particular topic.
So move.
Got a motion on the floor. Any further questions? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed have the same right. Thank you.
Yeah, sit there.
Kyle, this is like a bad penny that just won't go away. You've been dealing with this from the time you come into this
Since
office.
my second day on the job,
Since
Mayor.
second time.
Yes, ma'am. So
It's back again.
that was in July of 2008. So this, yes, ma'am. So this project has been going on for some time, and it remains to continue
Yes.
to evolve. So we have before us is case number 25-08, and this is a Front Street Village Phase 3 site plan. Just information regarding this particular request is that the applicant is asking for a 14-unit townhome development, and those townhomes would equal 11,390 square feet. And then there are two commercial structures at the front along Lennoxville Road that would total 9,600 square feet. The applicant is Front Street Village LLC. We've already covered the location, and the existing land use is mostly undeveloped, and it does have a small commercial storage facility near the Lennoxville Road area. And its total area is 4.503 acres, and in the land use plan, it says mixed use, but it has changed since then, and it's now suburban residential. And boy, now we're really going deep. In 2008, the master plan actually identified this area for Phase 2 and Phase 3 of the master plan. And Phase 2 showed commercial structures along Lennoxville, so that's being consistent. And it had an underlying zoning of B3 commercial, again, also consistent. Phase 3 identified multifamily with some parking with the underlying zoning of multifamily. And again, we are still consistent with the PUD. I think it's important to realize the next bullet that we have, that only a few years ago, the Board of Commissioners did approve a reduction in the total number of parking spaces from 631 spaces to 398, as the developer did withdraw over 180 resort dwellings on the south side of Lennoxville Road from development. That's actually a huge impact. The road improvements along the Lennoxville Road have already been made for this project and have been installed to meet the NCDOT requirements as per their submitted transportation impact analysis. Again, the Technical Review Committee has reviewed these plans and have signed off on them. And at their April 21st meeting, the Planning Board also unanimously recommended approval of the proposed site plan. The next slides that we have show a vicinity map as to the properties that are being requested to be developed, and we also have an aerial photo that gives an understanding of about what's there now as being a really undeveloped space. And then we have some photos which identify that as well. You see the commercial building to the, trying to think what it would look like in your folks. So it would be to your right, I believe, near the Lennoxville Road area. You see apartments in the background. And then we have over to the eastern portion, you see the existing dry stack marina that is already developed as part of the original Front Street Village plan as well. This is the phasing plan that I mentioned, and this phasing plan does go back to 2008. And it does show, is what I was mentioning earlier, the units and the underlying zoning. And I have to say, it's very unusual to find the consistency, especially over almost a 16-year period, of what was originally approved and what is being proposed for development. We have for you the proposed site plan up on the screen right now. And I think it's important to also point out, one of the highlights of this is that the pavement material is permeable or pervious pavement that will be used for this parking lot as in the drive aisles as well. And I couldn't let Mr. Fasolino get away with just talking about landscape. I wanted to have our landscape plan up here as well for this project.
That's right.
As again, this is certainly identifying a large area of landscaping and open space that would be included, as well as the tree planting around the landscaping and tree planting and shrubs along Lennoxville Road. Should also be noted along Lennoxville Road to continue the connectivity. That sidewalk and a multi-use trail will be developed and installed by the developer across the frontage. And we are actually working with the property owner to the east to provide full connectivity from where the dry stack marina is and provide one solid connection from there to this point at the end of the property. So that's a positive for us as well. As also required in the original PUD, the applicant had to provide elevation drawings with color samples. Please do not ask me what colors these are. However, I can tell you that the siding is a vinyl siding, and as of recent, the developer has asked that rather than going with asphalt shingles, that they do go with a metal type roofing. So I think it's important to realize that. But these are the colors and the elevation drawings that have been submitted by the applicant. And those are for the residential units. And then this would be the commercial unit, one of the two commercial units that would be along Lennoxville Road. And with that, Madam Mayor, I'll be glad to entertain questions.
Okay, any questions for Kyle? We'll start with Commissioner Lopiccolo.
Kyle, in my packet, I did not see a landscape plan. I have a site plan, phase 3, but not a landscape plan. Can you review and I can't really see that landscape plan of what we have there. Obviously, does the landscape plan meet code, and are all the trees or bushes, are they all native to the area?
We have 12. We have 12 5-inch caliper live oak trees. We have 53 wax myrtles. We have 73 yopon hollies. And then the other areas would be permanent seeding or sod.
Thank you.
Yes, sir. I'm glad I've got an eye appointment later this month.
Okay.
And is there a lighting plan as well? Curious.
There is not a lighting plan with this. However, we are working with Duke Energy, and it will be dark sky, and that is one of the notes.
Okay.
Trust me, the applicant is heavily into the dark sky lighting, and that was actually their recommendation originally.
It's a challenging applicant, right? Yeah.
I did not. Well, Mayor, I can say that this applicant plus the previous applicant will tell you that we've worked on these projects for a while, and I'm certain they'll tell you that nothing is rubber stamped in our department.
Mm-hmm.
So.
And you said most of this plan has not changed over the years.
That is correct.
Current
Yes.
design of this is a PUD, obviously.
Yes, sir. This is from 2008. This is from October, November of 2008. And yes, sir, even the underlying zoning, which you will see to your right of the RMF, the residential multifamily, showed residential multifamily units there as what's being proposed today, and parking. And then you have parking and B3 commercial units, again, shown on this plan. They're a little bit different in square footage or size, but that's exactly what's being proposed.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Gilligan?
I followed the planning board's conversation on this, and so I feel really comfortable with it and don't have any questions.
All right, thank you. Commissioner Spiegler?
Do we know yet, will any of the, so this is for 14 units, is that correct, Kyle?
Yes, ma'am.
Do we know, will those also include short-term rentals? Is that part of the site plan at this point?
Ma'am, I'm actually going to defer answering that because I think the applicant has a better answer than I do.
Okay.
And I think it's important for the applicant to share that with the community.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. Commissioner Cooper?
No, I'll wait for that.
Okay.
All right. If there's no further questions for Kyle, we'll have the applicant come up. I don't know who's you. Okay, there you go.
I didn't see him sneak in.
All right.
I'm sorry, the question again, please?
Well, one of them is, do you plan on having short-term rentals in your facility?
No.
Okay. And Commissioner Piccolo, did you have a further question
No further questions, no.
for the applicant? Commissioner Gilligan?
None.
I think I asked yours, but about the
Sorry,
short-term rental?
I'm sorry, I missed the answer.
No,
Oh,
was the answer, no. No short-term
no
rentals.
short-term rentals.
That's correct.
What about, do you have a price point for these yet?
No.
Not yet. And then, this may have been a question for Kyle.
But I'll be a little bit more open than, only because it's you, Sarah.
Thank you, that's nice.
Our main objective with these 14 units is to offer them primarily or at least openly to our employee group. We employ 130 people at the hotel, and we're hoping that these units, if you would, they're 2-bedroom, 2-bath units, and we're very much hoping that they will be occupied by key employees and we're in a very fortunate position owning the land that, to answer your question about rentals, they're going to be at an attractive place because we own the land, just to be blunt. And so we don't have to amortize the cost of the land. And the reason I think that's so important is because it's what we're facing as commissioners every day, that the cost of our land is what's causing the cost of housing to be so difficult. And so we looked at this, we thought about it, and we really said, hey, we own the land. Through the efforts of Kyle and this thing, we've been able to lower the need for parking, and we're trying to turn this into an advantage for employment for the hotel. That's not a warrant or a representation on rate or price, but that's the plan that we have, Sarah. So your question's
Thank you.
right on target.
Yeah, thank you, Commissioner Oliver. And one, I don't know if this is a question or more of a statement, but thinking about the long-term plan for Lennoxville Road, and I know we've talked about it, but it's sort of way in the future, that sidewalk that goes down Lennoxville Road, just thinking about how this is going to add more cars, more people, that makes that sidewalk and the safety of that area very important, as we're going to have people crossing over. And they already do, but as you put more housing and people and cars, thinking about more traffic and then people having to walk across Lennoxville, need for crosswalks, that sort of thing. So
Yeah, we agree with that, and as a community, we are fortunate because we did do a transportation impact and met the requirements of that TIA on a density that was significantly higher than this. So we're actually going to be in a beneficial, from the town standpoint, we're going to actually be a beneficiary of that, and we have forever put sidewalks every time we developed a site, and I'm in favor of that likewise, as you know, including
I am too.
including crosswalks.
good. Okay, thank you.
Any other questions for the commissioners?
Look, I don't come to your job and push buttons. Commissioner Cooper?
I just like to commend you that you're looking at in terms of your staffing and not just as people employed in the hotel, that you actually have a warm heart that they can be able to live within, both because it's twofold, because one, it allows them to be close to the job, and if a vehicle not working, they can walk or whatever, but I just want to commend you that. And I hope others would maybe take example and do the same thing to provide for for the service workers here in the town of Beaufort. Because if you were to ask them as they come up, which I do in most of the restaurants over time, they ask them where they live. And Beaufort is not where they live. Newport, Swansboro, New Bern, Havelock, Newport, those are major places to travel-wise. And being in the service industry doesn't always mean that you have the best transportation available. And if your vehicle go down, that means you got to call in, which means that now that supervisor got to find somebody to take that person's place. You're going to be eliminating that, and that's commendable.
And I think we're going to find in our community that we're going to see more and more of that. I've had in some of the things I've been involved in, I've heard several employers thinking about that and recognizing the difficulty not only in turnover but just in retention. And I think that we as employers are going to see more of that. So I'm pleased that we're in a position where we can do it. And I look forward to seeing how it turns out. I will share with you that I'd love to have a police car parked in one of those things, because that way you can keep track of the other 13 people that are there. So that's another, so I'd love to be able to work that out.
Sounds great.
I'm sure the chief can find you one.
Yeah. Got
He
plenty of people.
maybe even have one that.
And John Wade is here from our civil engineering firm and design, and if there are any questions for him, he'll be glad to answer those also.
Any questions for the civil engineer that's here? I think we're pretty good. I'm sorry to make you stand up, but sounds like we're pretty good, huh? Yeah, you were paid. But if you want to say something, because you've been patiently waiting, okay. Give you your 10 minutes of fame. All righty. So now it's time for the board to deliberate, unless you have any further questions for the applicant or the staff when it comes down to case number 2508, Front Street Village Phase 3 Site Plan. What is the pleasure of the board?
I'll make a motion to approve case number 25-08.
Thank you. We've got a motion on the floor. Any further questions? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed have the same right. You can come back to your seat now.
And Mayor, that should close, I say should because I was wrong once before, that should close out the entire Front Street Village project.
Congratulations.
I said should.
Should.
Didn't say will.
All right,
I
premature.
said should. Said should.
Heading in the right direction. All right, now we get to Shock Matt. It's his turn. Manager's report. I already have one, I think. Sure. Take one and pass it down.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm actually handing out a printed copy, and I want to thank Elizabeth. She's got the visual up on the screen. So this is my opportunity to give you basically your 30-day update with my managerial report. So I appreciate the community's understanding. So we're going to start with our USDA project update. Want to let the community know that we have brought back Mr. Greg Mashaw, who is now no longer in retirement. We've brought him out of the dugout and put him back on the field. So Mr. Mashaw has returned with the agreement and opportunity to help us directly oversee our USDA projects, which are comprised of both water, sewer, and stormwater. We want to let the community know that we're looking at solutions and are working hard to determine if we can meet and or beat our USDA deadlines. Our deadlines have been extended on the stormwater project through 12/31/25. Our water project has been extended no later than the end of April 2026, as well as our sewer. And it's a critical piece to let the board know that our loan payments will begin June 1st, 2026, which means any indebtedness currently underway with our grant and loan obligations to USDA must be included in our proposed fiscal year 25-26 budget. And those dollar amounts are relatively significant. On the water and sewer side, near $500,000 with a interest rate that is sub 2%. So it's an extremely attractive rate, and I applaud the community for not only seeking grant dollars, but getting a very low interest rate on critical infrastructure needs. So we want to let you know that the USDA project for us is foremost and upfront. During our April 28th budget retreat, or a budget-focused meeting during our workshop, I was asked to communicate and do a deeper dive into our salary study. I want to thank our HR director, Ms. Barbara Cooper, on that. We went through an analysis at great length on the 5th of May. We're both in concurrence that our years of service pay adjustment, which is plus or minus rated $114,000, is the recommendation we would ask the board to consider in our fiscal 25-26 budget. The reason that the years of service study would be critical is not only for employee retention, but to provide parity within our grade salary adjustments. And so I was asked to specifically look at that, and would like to let you know one more time that that years of service adjustment is the recommendation I would concur with. In Carteret County, we've had multiple opportunities to meet with our Carteret County team. Again, I want to welcome Sharon Griffin in her new role as Carteret County Manager, and she has been so welcoming to me in my transition from Emerald Isle here to Beaufort. Let you know that we've had a chance to sit down, and one of the first orders of business is the potential to seek and receive up to $530,000 for additional stormwater management work. And so we're in that process of working with Carteret County. Our staff has helped us try to bring that forward for approval from Carteret County. So that's the first and foremost, is an additional $500,000 in 100% grant funds that would help us relieve some drainage issues for our community. The next is an updated tax reevaluation data, and I want to let you know that a substantial amount of time was spent on this. If anyone in the community has any questions, we'd gladly answer them. We worked very hard and close with the subcontracted firm as well as Carteret County to get 100% of the most current data, and I want to thank our finance director, Christy Wood, on that. We have worked ad nauseum to try to hone in on that to the nearest tenth of a penny. So again, your revenue neutral tax rate is right at 29 cents with the current data that we have. On the Parks and Recreation front, the board had asked us to look at what will the addition of a potential for a full-time employee look like. How would that work? Currently today, Rachel is helping us run multiple fronts, both Parks and Recreation, public information, and the like. And we will be able to work to present a proposal as early as this coming Thursday. We're working on 2 separate PowerPoints as to what it would look like on the public information side and what we could potentially do if an FTE were funded on the parks side. Additionally, the budget process itself. So for the community, I want to let you know that tonight was the first rollout of really this encompassing budget with all the detail that has been worked on for the last 4 months by staff and with the current elected officials. We do have a workshop again scheduled for this coming Thursday, May the 15th at 4:00 p.m. in this exact structure to seek further input from the board. And once a tax rate is determined and or the use of fund balance or items are stricken from our potential lists, our staff will work very hard to put together a draft budget document that is 100% balanced. It's our goal to bring that balanced budget with the concise direction of this board to the community effective on Monday, May 21st. That will meet all of our North Carolina general statute guidelines so that we'll be able to have a conversation, present the budget, and then we would have our public hearing scheduled for our first regular meeting in the month of June. And as a reminder for both this elected team and our community that we are statutorily required to provide and pass a balanced budget before the conclusion of June, which I'm very comfortable that we will be able to do. And so this has been a really warm welcoming, and I thank every team member on staff for helping me. As you would guess in this transition process, you're asking a lot of questions, and you're asking them rapid fire, and so everybody has been extremely helpful in that process. One of the things that the assistant town manager is helping us try to assemble is we have an in-process large-scale projects list. This is a very comprehensive 100,000-foot level at each and every project that we're working on, and we're trying to itemize the project, its funding source, the percent complete, if there's a particular person within our team that is the point of contact, so that you would have all things Beaufort at a glance. We think that's extremely critical as we're trying to talk about, can we take anything else on in the next 12 months? Who's taking that on? Should we be adding a resiliency officer? Are we adding that duty to someone else? And how does all that look when we're trying to hone in on a balanced, comprehensive, but tactical approach for good governance in 2025-26? So again, our goal is to maintain the lowest possible costs with the highest possible yield. And I would like to introduce that we would like to implement the Disney World style experience, so that when someone's calling our building, we're returning that call with a Disney World type of mentality as quickly as we can with the right answer. If someone comes to our front door, knocks on the front door and asks where something is, our goal is going to be to walk that person to that place as opposed to point. So we want to continue with the good stewardship that's already been established. And one of my sound advisors told me, welcome to Beaufort. Your number one goal is don't break the good thing that we already have. So my commitment to the community is not to break what's working. Come on, that was funny. So we're definitely not going to break it, because what we have here is a beautiful environment with some great things and beautiful people, and our job is to try to figure out how to service them all equitably and to the best of our ability in the 365 days that this next budget comes. So any question that you ask of me is a question that we'll research. And again, you normally won't hear from me. I don't know that answer, and my goal is to come up to speed as quickly as possible. So with that, I'll ask, are there any questions, anything that we should be doing different to help you get prepared during this budget conversation?
Commissioner Piccolo, any questions?
No questions right now.
Commissioner Gilligan?
No questions, just a big thank you in answering the question that you just posed about the budget. I really like the way you broke it down and with the alternatives. So thanks to you and Christy and all the other staff for that. It makes a lot of sense to me. Thank you.
Good, thank you. Commissioner Spiegler?
I don't have any questions, except where we're meeting Thursday at 4 p.m. Are we on this side or that side? This side.
I assume that we meet on the other side traditionally, but that is...
We've done it in both spaces, so it's really.
So this is where I'll say, I'm not sure where you want to meet. I'll gladly meet you on either side. We can dance between both sides, but wherever you're most comfortable having this conversation so that we can pull and share data. If I'm not mistaken.
Last year we did it in here. That was
yeah.
my first time, but that's why I was asking what the plan is for this year.
Well, if you want to be able to have the citizens able to see too a little bit better, I think in here would suit this large topic more so than over there in the other section.
Great question. Thank you.
What do you think?
Thank you.
Okay.
I don't have an opinion.
All right. They'll sit anywhere, but let's sit here tomorrow. On Thursday. Okay. Commissioner Oliver?
No question.
Thank you. Commissioner Cooper?
Same.
All righty. Thank you, Matt, for all that you've been doing. Now we're going to move on to mayor's, commissioners' comment. We'll start with Commissioner Lopiccolo.
I just want to thank the staff for all the hard work. Christy, Matt, and all the department heads for putting together this budget. As I said, the devil will be in the details. There's a lot I think we need to pick through here to understand revenue and expenses. And I look forward to that budget meeting because every little bit matters. We're tasked with that. We've been elected here to do that. And I think it's our duty to do the due diligence on this and make sure we get this right. Make sure the numbers are right and make sure that the budget is correct for the town. I think we have to have that discussion about our vision for the community and things that we'd like to see in that budget, not just the regular everyday things, but as we brought up, even the tree line item or things that we want to see in that for our community. So it's not just basically going through it and looking at, line by line by line, what do we want to see as elected commissioners for our community? What do we want to see differently maybe, or where put our resources towards? And, every little bit matters. Obviously, we see and hear deductions on certain things. We see additions in other areas. We saw even deduction on the parking for the town because we've shortened that time frame. And I want to thank Pivot's offer to allow us to have free parking passes for the commissioners, but I will actually decline that. I don't feel having a free parking pass is necessary. I think I'm not above the, I voted to have paid parking in this community, and I don't want to have a free parking place or a free parking tag to basically reduce any revenue for the community. So I'd like to decline that. But I look forward to the budget meeting on Thursday, and I hope we get through it very quickly.
Oh, quickly now? We're going to use the word quickly.
Yeah. Yeah, that's why I'm going to be sending a lot of questions ahead of time.
Quickly, not in that vocabulary.
Yes. All righty.
Oh, and one last thing. I want to congratulate Sharon for being elected to represent District 2 on the NCLM Board of Directors. So congratulations
Thank you
on
so
that.
much. Thank you so much. I appreciate that. Commissioner Gilligan?
Well, since you brought it up, Commissioner LaPiccolo, I'm also declining the parking. And I was thinking of actually getting it to come to Town Hall, but I'm just going to completely forego it for the same reasons as you, and hope in the future that we can discuss some perhaps benefits for locals. I know Matt mentioned some of the places he's been that has been a benefit, so I look forward to exploring that in the future. And I'll keep the rest of this very light and sweet. Matt, thank you for everything so far. I do acknowledge that you've been drinking from the fire hose, but hopefully you'll soon be drinking from a garden hose. And appreciate everyone in attendance tonight, those who've already left, those who are online, everyone who shows up means a lot. I know these meetings are not easy to listen to sometimes. They can be long, and you being here right along with us means a lot. And finally, I'm going to end on the best note of all. Big Daddy Wesley's has hand-scooped ice cream now. And I want to make sure they continue to offer that. So everybody make sure that you get some hand-scooped ice cream when you're not downtown. If you want to avoid the parking issue, go to Big Daddy Wesley's and get some Hershey's ice cream. And enjoy the murals on the building.
So that's why they have like 10 scooped ice cream flags outside?
Yes.
Yeah, okay, I had a feeling. All right. Commissioner Spiegler?
I just want to echo Commissioner Gillikin and say thank you to everybody who have participated today in person and online. I do not have any comments except to, again, say thank you to Matt for everything you've done the past few weeks. We appreciate you, and keep up the good work.
Thank you. Commissioner Oliver?
Everything has been said, and I thank you very much, Mayor.
Thank you. Commissioner Cooper?
Yes, thanks, Matt. Great job you're doing it. Like they say, you 3-inch fire hose in your or even bigger in your mouth, and absorbing a lot of things for Beaufort. I want to thank everybody for being here today, and I know some things. Some people got what they wanted, and some people didn't. So. And that is to go also with our budget coming up, that, for staffing, and I do military terms of stuff, and that is whenever something is presented, what they want is, we call it a wish list, that you wish and hope that you'll be able to get it. But, sometimes just as you were a child, mom and daddy sometimes disappointed you, because you wanted that red wagon flyer, and you wasn't able to get it. And so, that also applied in terms of staffing. We do live at 28516, but that doesn't necessarily mean that we have all that revenue in order to keep you a happy child come Christmas. But I do appreciate the staff. They do a fantastic job. And I sure wish we did have the means to give everybody their wish. But unfortunately, maybe, I don't know. I understand from when I was up in Mooresville, I met a lot of people that knew Matt, and they said Matt is a miracle worker. So hopefully, hopefully he can provide us with some miracles. That's it. But anyway, it's rainy out. I think it's your rain, maybe. But anyway, safe travels home. Safe travel all this week, because I think we got rain the entire week.
Yeah.
And for those that's online, be safe as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, short and sweet. Matt whispered to me, he said, are we going to get out of here at 7:30? That's not happening ever, I don't think, sometimes. But when Matt was first hired, I said, you're going to have an inherited group of people that are going to be great to work with. It's our staff. And you've come into that, and I hope you've realized how great everyone is here at the town, and they've put the best interest, whether they lived here or not, of the citizens of Beaufort first and foremost. And I want to thank each and every one of you for all that you do each and every day. Also, I'd like to thank Matt, although you're congratulating me on being the representative for the North Carolina League of Municipalities. Serving on the board is an honor for District 2. It was because Matt had encouraged me to apply and supported me in that effort, and so did Elizabeth. She was there for me during the reception where we were sworn in, and I want to thank you for that gentle push and that support. So it really means a lot. So it's great when this board is supported by our staff because we support you as well. I want to thank our commissioners for doing the hard work and going through your budget. This is going to be a very unique season for us, and one that we'll learn a lot of lessons from and make a lot of good decisions, as well as grow from some of the interesting ones that we'll make that we'll take a look at for years to come. But I think this board is going to do everything that they can to get it right. And I want to thank you for all that you do. It is now time to go ahead and close this meeting out. So can I get a motion to, what do you want to say? No, you do not. He does not have anything to say. Can I get a motion to adjourn?
Yes.
All right. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay, everybody stay and talk to Melvin.